Prince George, who is, of course, the future King of England. Cameron Walker, tell us.
Hello there, Emily and Tom. Yes, some breaking news in the last few moments from Kensington Palace regarding our future king, Prince George of Wales, the oldest son of the Prince and Princess of Wales. The short statement from Kensington Palace reads, Kensington Palace can confirm that Prince George will attend Eton College in September. That news just coming in from the royal household in the last few moments. This clearly is, well, perhaps not surprising news for those in royal circles. Eton College, the most prestigious school, arguably in the country, educating 20 prime ministers and, of course, Prince George's own father and uncle, Prince William and Prince Harry, as well as two Dukes of Gloucester, the Duke of Kent and Prince Michael of Kent as well. So that confirmation just coming in from Kensington Palace, £63,000 a year it costs to send a child to Eton College. Prince George will, I understand, be boarding for that entire time because Eton College does not allow day pupils or weekly pupils, so he will be boarding. We know because Prince William kind of said it a couple of weeks ago during a radio interview that George is occasionally boarding at his current school of Lambrook, but this is going to be full termly boarding, so he's not going to be home for a good 7 weeks, so he'll go home for half term. There's 25 boarding houses. William and Harry were both at Manor House, which has around 50 boys in it. It also had the Duke of Wellington back in the day. He won the Battle of Waterloo. The only question mark there is about security and the cost of security to British taxpayers, because, of course, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, 2 boys, 1 girl. Eton College only accepts male pupils, which means Charlotte has to go somewhere else when she is 13 years old and goes to senior school, which means that the police, the Metropolitan Police and the Royal and VIP Executive Committee have to decide kind of a level of protection that Eton College is going to get, as well as whatever school the Prince and Princess of Wales decide to send Charlotte to. So is that going to be an extra cost for the British taxpayer because the Prince and Princess have decided not to send George to a co-educational school, such as Marlborough, for example, where the Princess of Wales went? But clearly, the Prince and Princess of Wales, who have viewed a number of private schools over the last couple of years for Prince George, have decided on Eton College, keeping up with that family tradition. And clearly, Prince William had a pretty good time there, and they have decided as a family that George is most suitable for Prince George to go to Eton College, our future king.
Fantastic stuff. A safe choice, I think. Cameron Walker, thank you very much. We'll catch up with you. You are at Ascot, of course, so we've got a lot to see there as well. What do you make of that?
Very handy for Windsor.
Very handy.
I mean, you turn up at Windsor Station.
And Slough.
Yes, but you go into Windsor railway station from central London. You can sort of turn left to the castle or turn right to Eton College. I mean, it's literally a short walk from where they grew up in the grounds of Windsor Castle. So I think that's pretty suitable, really, for them.
Founded in 1440. He'd have to be away from his parents for 6 to 7 weeks at a time. There you go. He's growing up, our future monarch.
Certainly is. I went to Eton College a couple of months ago. To give a talk to the Journalism Society there. They gave me a pair of socks as a thank you, which I thought was very, very nice of them. But it's a fascinating... But it was the first time I'd ever been there, and it was just absolutely fascinating. The history, the sort of Harry Potter-like corridors and etchings in the wood, these sort of ancient sort of wooden desks where centuries and centuries of students have graffitied their names or other rude words into them. An absolutely fascinating insight into how the other half live.
Well, yes, apparently the fees are £63,000 a year. So there you go. Bargain bucket education for our future monarch. Anyway, the Prime Minister is in France today, of course. He's with G7 leaders. He's promising new sanctions on Russia, more money to Ukraine, nuclear energy support for Ukraine too. More than 600 Russian-linked vessels will be hit with UK sanctions. That's as Britain steps up its efforts to cut off funding for Putin's war.
Meanwhile, sharks are circling back home as Wes Streeting has insisted this morning he has the number of MPs required to trigger a Labour leadership contest. OK, well, GBNews political editor Christopher Hope joins us now live from Evian. Christopher, what's the mood there for the Prime Minister? He has a lot of difficulties going on back home. Is he able to project authority?
Yes, I think he is. I mean, he likes to be on the world stage. He is nicknamed, maybe unfairly, Never Hear Keir, but the nature of Brexit is that we are now sovereign and you must travel the world and maintain these bilateral talks, and that's why the G7 is a way of talking to other major economies and deal with them and try and work out deals and work out how to work together. This morning they've been talking about security, Ukraine. Overnight the UK has said that it will sanction more of these LNG tankers coming from Russia to other parts of the world, and also he announced plans to supply £200 million worth of enriched uranium to Ukraine to keep Ukrainians warm in the winter. The PM has just given a clip to journalists travelling with him. In there he talked about the firebombing attacks on his family for the first time. We never heard him talk about this. It's been going through the courts, of course. Two individuals were found guilty yesterday. Here's what he said.
And justice has been done, so I'm pleased in that respect, particularly for my family who were affected by it. I think it has to be seen in its broader context. Here we are at the G7, we've just had the Ukraine session, and actually there was real unity in the room, in the G7, about the fact that Ukraine is doing better now, regaining territory, that the sanctions are having a real impact on Russia, and a real sense that now is the moment for all of us as a G7 to ramp up the pressure. And obviously you'll have seen this morning we put on even further sanctions in relation to Russia.
Not commenting on reports elsewhere that the Russian state was behind these firebombing attacks. And of course, he also, in the same clip, talked also about his future. He said he's proved critics wrong before, he'll do it again. He made very clear he intends to fight against anyone who will challenge him. As Tom's saying there, Wes Streeting claiming he has the necessary 81 Labour MPs supporting him. We'll find out whether Andy Burnham comes back to Parliament this week when there's by-elections held. But it looks to me like we are facing a Streeting-Burnham-Starmer leadership battle at some point later this summer to see who will be the Prime Minister by Christmas.
It's going to be absolutely fascinating, Chris. Can I just ask if there has been any murmur there at the G7? Do other countries and sort of all of the other sort of, rigmarole around this entire event, have people picked up on the Prime Minister's domestic difficulties?
Well, I think, Tom, to be fair, they all have them. I mean, Friedrich Merz is not at all popular at home. He's had his own problems with Donald Trump. He gave Donald Trump a German football shirt with Trump 47 on the back, which Trump waved and showed around. I mean, I think all the individual, I know we obsess, and we should do, he's our Prime Minister, about Sir Keir Starmer, but other leaders too have their own issues back home. Maybe it's interesting that as things stand, we don't think Donald Trump is going to meet with Keir Starmer in a bilateral. Again, more can be confirmed in the coming hours, and Donald Trump is here until late tomorrow, so that could change. Again, they talked on the phone. They met last night over dinner. That's the first meeting in person since the UK refused to get involved in the Iranian conflict earlier this year. I should say to you that Lady Starmer is here, Victoria Starmer. Now that's unusual because the last time she came on a trip with Sir Keir Starmer was the first one after he won the election back in July 2024.
She's bookending his career.
Yes.
They went together to NATO. Well, you could say that. I mean, they went to the NATO summit in Washington, D.C. You might say that. It certainly is a time of absolute jeopardy for the Prime Minister's future at home. But abroad, well, he's representing Britain, trying to talk a big game about security and so forth.
Well, there is the suggestion in the papers that she's there to try and make him look better on the international stage, or because it's going to be his last time. But Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed, our political editor there in Evian. I hope you've tried some of the water out there. I've heard it's
very
nice.
good.
I've heard it's there.
Although, is bottled water worth it? Because, of course, Evian backwards is naive.
Anyway, joining us now is assistant content editor, I wasn't sure where you were going with that, at The Spectator, William Atkinson. William, it's all well and good, the Prime Minister talking about this extra support for Ukraine and fresh sanctions on Ukraine and how we're going to try and stop Russia from going any further in their war on Ukraine. But we've just had our Defence Secretary resign. We've just had our Armed Forces Minister resign over defence spending. We're only going up to 2.68% when everyone wants us to go up up to 3, including Donald Trump, who's very much there at the G7 summit. Seems to be all smokes and mirrors.
Yes, exactly. I think it's a classic sort of late-stage prime ministerial move, really, isn't it? He's trying to pose as quite an important figure on the world stage, but we all know that he's speaking very loudly while carrying a very small stick. Especially as his own former defence secretary thinks that the Prime Minister can't be trusted with the nation's defences. He thinks the Prime Minister isn't sufficiently invested in investing in the nation's defences. Then why on earth should Donald Trump et al. Think that the Prime Minister is a serious figure? I think, as you were just saying, the reason why Lady Starmer is with him now is that he's kind of enjoying a sort of farewell tour, whether he wants to admit it to himself or not.
I mean, this is one of the difficulties, though. What do you make of what Christopher Hope was pointing out, that this isn't a problem unique to this Prime Minister? Friedrich Merz is facing his own potential challenge from a figure who's perhaps a bit more populist within his own party, from an industrial heartland in Germany. I mean, the parallels are there. A regional leader, even, within Germany. I mean,
a northern powerhouse.
Yeah, quite possibly. Across the board, we're seeing European countries flatline in growth, have domestic difficulties for their leadership, living standards going down, energy prices going up. These are countries facing the same problems.
Well, it's no good time, as you say, to be an incumbent anywhere in the Western world because of these big structural challenges. But at least with the Germans, because they were a bit more sensible than us in the good times, their debt-to-GDP ratio was sufficiently low that when Russia invaded Ukraine 4 years ago, they were able to ramp up defence spending, but to do so via borrowing, which is fundamentally an option that we no longer have because the bond markets are so resistant to the sort of decisions of successive British governments to hike up taxes while sort of destroying growth and borrowing like it's no tomorrow. So, I think you can say that Keir Starmer has problems that are shared by other European leaders. But we've also got ourselves into a particular hole. Remember, successive governments, again, of both parties have sufficiently cut our defences that we've essentially been reduced to being Belgian with nuclear weapons, which is, I think, no position that any sort of British leader would want to be in. And so, as a consequence of that, we can say that Keir Starmer is one of several unlucky leaders there at the G7, but we still have to be, honest about him. He is a particularly useless, a particularly incompetent Prime Minister, and God knows we'll all be happy to see the back of it.
Well, let's get on to potential leadership challenges then. Wes Streeting talking the big talk today, saying he's got the numbers. We don't have evidence of that, do we yet? But he's saying it. He's saying he's ready to essentially oust the Prime Minister. We've got another man in the shape of Andy Burnham who's keen on the job as well. Let's be careful about the by-election on Thursday. But we know there are a number of people who would quite like the top job. How do you see this going for Keir Starmer?
Well, I mean, Keir Starmer, again, has said that he wants to sort of fight on. The suggestion is that even that Lady Starmer is urging him to do so, which seems remarkable when, all the sort of stresses and strains that being a prime ministerial spouse entails. I think if we think that we might be heading for an Andy Burnham coronation, it looks like both Wes Streeting and the Prime Minister himself are quite keen to prevent that from happening. Again, sort of Streeting resigned and then forced various other ministers to resign alongside him, sort of claiming that he had the numbers, but then he failed to go over the top then. And I don't think anything that we've seen in the subsequent weeks since his resignation suggests that his position within the Parliamentary Labour Party has strengthened. I mean, it strikes me that sort of Burnham seems to be the shiny new toy. And Labour MPs would far prefer to sort of engage with him than Wes Streeting, who, successive polls for Labourists and other organisations have suggested has no chance of winning, even against Keir Starmer in the final round. So why would you throw your lot in with Wes Streeting in that sense?
William, do you think that Keir Starmer will actually challenge Burnham, Streeting, Carnes or whoever else it might be in the mix? Or because we have seen this play out before. I mean, famously, I fight on, I fight to win was a Margaret Thatcher quote, and she was then convinced to not stand in the second round of the 1990 leadership contest. Famously, Liz Truss says, I'm a fighter and not a quitter, and then quit. Famously, Gordon Brown squatted in number 10 for days after he lost the election and then resigned. I mean, prime ministers tend to say, I'm going to fight on forever and ever and ever, until they don't.
Yes, as you say, this is the traditional thing that I suppose any incumbent has to say, because they want to be prime minister. It's the summit of their careers, until the point at which they realise their position has deteriorated sufficiently that they can no longer continue. But we can say with Keir Starmer there are very few interesting things about him. But one is that he is highly competitive. Remember, he is a man who decided, having sort of climbed the heights of the legal profession, having been sort of DPP, that his next great thing was to go into politics and then climb to the summit of that, which he achieved, in fairness to the man, remarkably quickly. And so I think even though he has no positive agenda as Prime Minister, indeed, he has very little actual interest in politics, he likes winning. He likes competition.
Yes.
He likes, just as he will have enjoyed Arsenal winning the Premier League, he wants to remain as Prime Minister because ultimately winning to him is the only thing that really matters. But if we see various tergiversations in and out of Parliament in the near future that cause Keir Starmer's position to deteriorate even further, then perhaps, yes, even Lady Starmer will turn around and say, Keir, I think the game is up.
There's something quite David Cameron about that in a funny sort of way, because lots of Prime Ministers sort of, why do you want to be Prime Minister, they're asked, and they say, I want to change things, I want to do this, David Cameron, when he was asked, why do you want to be Prime Minister in the run-up to the 2010 election, said, because I think I'd be quite good at it. Which, I mean, is a perfectly adequate answer, but it doesn't sound particularly ideological.
Oh, I wouldn't compare David Cameron to Keir Starmer. That's a bit unfair, isn't it, William?
Well, yes, I think I think David Cameron was actually quite a decent Prime Minister, especially in comparison to the incumbents. But obviously, 10 years ago, next week we had the Brexit referendum, which brought Cameron's career last to an unhappy and perhaps unfortunately soon ending. But
yes, I remember it well. William Atkinson, we're going to have to leave it there. Assistant content editor at The Spectator. Great to have you on.
Fascinating to think that Cameron's actually our longest-serving Prime Minister since Blair.
Believe it or not, I was at the Glastonbury Music Festival when he resigned.
Gosh.
Shed a tear, of course.
I was in Westminster Tower.
Well, a report by the Telegraph newspaper has claimed that a BBC children's television programme was shaped by the involvement of pro-migration activists.
Well, according to the newspaper's investigation, campaigners in favour of migration say they had helped influence the show's content as part of a wider effort to improve public perceptions of asylum seekers in Britain.
Yes, well, joining us now is author and commentator Joanna Williams. Joanna, this is an exclusive in the Telegraph newspaper today. Essentially, there are these charities that try to infiltrate the media in order to push a positive view on things like immigration, asylum seekers, etc., etc. They're talking in particular here about a CBBC programme where it's all about trying to impact the framing of migration. And funnily enough, some of these charities and activists seem to be funded, at least in part, by the taxpayer.
I think this is truly shocking, and I think it sounds a dramatic thing to say, but I really do believe that there is a war on for our children's minds. I mean, who do these political activists think they are? If parents put CBBC on for their children, or a CBeebies cartoon, they expect their children to be entertained, perhaps educated. They do not expect political messages to be rammed down their children's throat. This is children who are too young to have formed political opinions of their own, to appreciate what it is that they're being confronted with, or to be able to formulate arguments in opposition to what they're hearing. I think indoctrination is really the only word for what's being attempted here.
Now, of course, the BBC claim that they haven't been influenced, but of course the storyline of the programme does sound, well, it's about a refugee.
It's about pickle.
Albeit an alien refugee, but perhaps if we're using American terminology, that fits. And it's interesting because the BBC say this was a completely independently produced programme, it didn't have any outside influence, but then you have this charity producing a document of all of its successes this year, boasting about changing the storyline of this particular programme, of influencing the storyline of this particular programme, alongside a whole host of other media successes that this charity boasts of.
I think even if this charity didn't get to dictate the exact wording of the script that was used, the very fact that these conversations were taking place should truly concern us, because particular groups have been chosen, particular charities have been chosen to have these conversations with, to engage with as experts, and other organisations, other groups have not been selected. So the very fact that these conversations were taking place suggests to me that there was a particular political framework that producers were sympathetic towards in producing these programmes. Now, I put my hand up. I pay my television licence fee. I mean, perhaps many GB News viewers might think I'm a fool for doing that, but I do. and said that the fact that some of my money potentially has gone towards enabling these conversations to take place leaves me feeling very uncomfortable.
But Joanna, it's more insane than that. You are both paying for the people who are being influenced, but also through your tax, you're paying for the people doing the influencing. It's like funding both sides of a war. I mean, it's completely insane.
It is. You know, I wouldn't feel so bad if it was funding both sides, but of course we know it's only funding one side because the charities, the campaigning groups, everybody that the BBC is consulting with on this issue is coming from the exact same side. Now, it happens to be a side that I'm not in favour of, a side that politically I would like to challenge. And the fact is that if I had children who were still that age, thankfully they're a bit older now, you know, I put my children down to watch CBeebies when I wanted 10 minutes to rush and make myself a quick cup of tea. I would not want my children to be experiencing this form of indoctrination, and yet I would have paid for precisely that to happen.
Well, I can't imagine the BBC's producers sat down with Migration Watch and Net Zero Watch to discuss how they can shape their narratives. But anyway, Joanna Williams, thank you very much indeed, author and commentator. I suppose the left would say, well, what's wrong with having positive stories about immigrants and asylum seekers?
This is
it was when it becomes a sort of indoctrination
This
process.
is the issue with left-wing lobby groups, and I discovered this actually at Labour Party conference last year, where I bumped into the National Education Union outside the conference with a whole host of school children. And they were there with their school teachers, protesting, with handing out leaflets to the delegates, these children, handing out leaflets that had been printed by the National Education Union saying, we need, I think it was free... I forget what it was. I forget what the specific campaign was.
School meals?
Free school meals, that would have been it. Universal free school meals. And I spoke to the teachers. We did an interview for GBNews, actually, with one of the teachers. And I was like, isn't this political? Isn't this breaking sort of every rule in the book, politicising these children, take them out of school to conduct a political campaign outside a party conference? She says, no, it's not political. It's for the good of the children. These people genuinely do not think, even when they're in the midst of the most nakedly political campaign that you could ever see, even if they're handing out political literature, they still are convinced that they're not doing politics because it's for the good of the X, Y or Z.
But it's the same when the teachers take the children out onto Palestine marches. They don't see that as political. They just think, oh, this is for the good of the world.
But surely,
why wouldn't any child
people on
want to
the
come
other
along on
side
this?
of the debate also think what they're doing is good.
Yeah.
It's just they're less blinded by a sense of moral superiority.
Well, isn't it something like 99.9% of teachers are left-wing? Don't quote me on that.
I can believe that.
Anyway, BBC said the charity had no power to influence editing or production of its programming, and that consultation with experts was common practice.
Experts. Well, a spokesman for the charity says we support people from a wide range of backgrounds to share their own experiences in their own words and to help people working in our media and culture to represent those experiences fairly and accurately. We do not work with nor lobby the government. Across many different issues, we bring journalists, creatives and storytellers together with people who have first-hand experiences of a range of issues.
OK, well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
What drives someone to adopt a child only to go on to abuse and murder them? We'll speak to a psychotherapist about the disturbing psychology behind the Preston Davey case and the warning signs that were missed time after time.
Yes, but after the break, the National Crime Agency orders police forces to reinvestigate historic grooming gang allegations that go back as far as 2010.
All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night. This is the Saturday Five.
You got me. You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
The late edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, late edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, late edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is the show where each week we see what's happening in the world of culture, current affairs and politics.
First we'll say, welcome to the UK. Oh, thank you.
And we're not afraid to use our free speech so that you can use yours.
It's not controversial in the slightest to anyone who hasn't lost their mind.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 28 minutes past midday. Now, 8 closed grooming gang cases have been referred back to police forces for re-investigation.
Yes, the National Crime Agency is reviewing hundreds of files where potential lines of inquiry may have been missed because of human error.
Well, GB News national reporter Charlie Peters joins us now in the studio. Charlie, what can you tell us?
Well, there were some 1,200 cases that the NCA were aware of and that had been sent to them by 23 forces back in November, where that human error concern had been raised in several cases where no further action had been taken. The NCA now sending back 8 of those cases, and they won't tell us where those cases are and which forces are involved. But we do know that they will be reopened and re-investigated. They've also told us that these cases involve situations where the suspects are still alive and where there previously hasn't been a review. The cases that have been sent for reopening, they all took place from at least 2010, which is different to the national inquiry, which is looking back into the 90s as well. Operation Beacon Port having slightly different terms of reference for its scale and investigation. This is a major announcement, though, and it does come on the first anniversary of Baroness Louise Casey's major report into grooming gangs last year, which actually one of its key recommendations was to set up Operation Beacon Port, one of her 12 recommendations, not only to have that government national inquiry, but also a national police investigation. There's been developments since then, of course. Scotland's also now having a grooming gangs inquiry, but Beacon Port, this NCA investigation, this is England and Wales only, so we're going to see where these investigations take us.
What could it be, this human error that they're talking about?
Well, we did hear from the force, the National Crime Agency, last year what that meant, and it covered several areas, Emily. Not only was it a failure to agree with victim survivor accounts or take them seriously, engage them in the most appropriate manner, but also a failure to adequately process suspects, be that a failure to follow lines of inquiry, a failure to interview them in some cases. That's what they had identified. So They said now, the NCA, they've trained some 800 officers in best practice since then. They've issued an online portal. They've also produced some documentation to upskill how police forces engage with grooming gang cases and group-based child sexual exploitation. Because one of the trends that we've seen, of course, across so many of these cases all around the country is that survivors aren't taken seriously, and in some really troubling cases, there may even be an involvement of police officers and local officials in the cover-up, and in the worst cases, the exploitation of the abuse themselves.
So this is a huge moment for some of those potential victims.
And also a huge moment for some of those perpetrators, who I think for many years, they would have thought they've gotten away with it. I think there'll be thousands around the country now living with that pang of fear, thinking, am I in this case of 8? Is it my case that's going to be looked into? And the NCA being very careful, not giving those further details to perhaps maintain that operational security. But what they're doing today is also, they're putting grooming gang abusers around the country. Precisely. They're putting grooming gang offenders around the country on notice to say, if you think you've gotten away with it, stand by, because we're coming for you.
Fantastic. It's a big signal. And Charlie, thank you indeed for bringing that to us. Well,
hopefully the victims will get some justice.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully the perpetrators will be locked up in the Keith in a way.
A lot of them will be living exactly where they were at the time.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more still to come on today's programme. But now let's get a quick update with the latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. The 12:30 headlines. Prince George will attend the prestigious Eton College from September, following the footsteps of his father, Prince of Wales. Kensington Palace has confirmed the 12-year-old will join the school, which also educated Prince William and the Duke of Sussex. Sir Keir Starmer has defended his handling of the defence spending, saying that money will be moved from other government departments to strengthen Britain's armed forces. Speaking at the G7 summit in France today, the Prime Minister said he will not walk away from the job, insisting he was elected to deliver change despite growing pressure over his leadership. Here, the UK's largest water company, Thames Water, has moved to a step closer to nationalisation after the government objected to a proposed rescue deal. Concerns the company could collapse first emerged 3 years ago. The Environment Secretary says the £10 billion bailout doesn't do enough to protect customers.
My priority is to secure the best outcome for consumers and the environment, and I don't want Thames Water's consumers to have to pick up the bill for the company's failures.
As we were just hearing, 8 closed grooming gang cases have been referred back to police forces for re-investigation. The National Crime Agency is reviewing hundreds of files where potential lines of inquiry may have been missed. And major tech firms are warning Sir Keir Starmer's social media ban for under-16s could push children into less regulated and less safe corners of the internet. The Prime Minister says the ban is needed to protect children's mental health. But companies including Meta, YouTube and TikTok say they already have safeguards in place. Those are the latest headlines for now. Full roundup with the lunchtime news at 1.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you, Sam. Now, we've got lots more coming up on today's show, including this horrific story. What drives someone to adopt a child only to go on to abuse them psychologically and sexually and then murder them? We'll speak to a psychotherapist about the disturbing psychology behind the Preston Davey case and whether there were warning signs that were missed.
Well, all of that and more to come with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Now, depending where you are in the UK today, there's going to be quite a different feel to things. In the southeast, it's going to be very warm, if not hot. Further north and west, a cloudier, cooler feel because we have low pressure to the northwest of the UK, and that's driving some fronts across us. And these fronts are bringing a lot of cloud and also some outbreaks of rain. The rain doesn't look particularly heavy and it's quite intermittent across northern parts through the bulk of the day, but more persistent rain pushing into parts of Wales and southwest England later on. More central eastern parts of England having a generally fine day. Lots of bright sunny weather breaking through the cloud, and temperatures here peaking in the mid to high 20s, so feeling very warm or hot, markedly fresher towards the north and west. Into this evening, and we're sticking with the quite cloudy theme across much of Scotland. Still some outbreaks of rain around, nothing particularly heavy. There could be some blustery winds in a few spots, but they're not especially strong. It's a similar story across Northern Ireland, so quite cloudy, a few spots of rain here and there. And then heading further south across, well, northern England, it's turning a bit wetter towards southwestern parts here. That's because of some rain spilling its way in from the southwest across western parts of England and also Wales. That then continues its progress further eastwards overnight. So most places, apart from the far southeast, will see some rain, and it could be persistent for a little while, but it will break up and there'll be some drier, perhaps even clear weather around before some more heavier bursts of rain come in from the southwest towards dawn. Temperatures not dropping a huge amount, most places staying in the mid to high teens Celsius, so a pretty warm night for many of us. And then tomorrow, a cloudier day in the southeast, and there will be some rain pushing through. The rain will be a little bit heavy at times across some southern parts of England as it makes its way eastwards across. Further north, and it's a showery day, so some breaks in the rain, and there might even be a bit of sunshine breaking through the cloud as well. Temperatures in the southeast down on today, elsewhere looking similar.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M25 clockwise near Salford, 3 lanes are restricted due to an accident at junction 15. On the A34 southbound in Oxfordshire, expect around 15-minute delays between the A44 and the A423 junction north of Kennington. Meanwhile, the A20 eastbound in Kent has lane restrictions following a broken-down vehicle between junctions with the A256 and the A2. The M1 northbound entry slip at junction 25 in Derbyshire has 1 lane closed due to a broken-down vehicle. And on the trains, buses replace services between Watford Junction and St Albans Abbey. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past midday.
Now, this is a horrific story. Social workers and medical staff have now been accused of missing 8 opportunities to spot the abuse suffered by baby Preston Davey before he was murdered by his adoptive father.
Well, the 13-month-old died in 2023, just weeks after being handed to gay couple Jamie Varley and John McGowan Foscurley.
Well, joining us now is psychotherapist and broadcaster Lucy Bereford. Lucy, what this child went through at such a young age, I mean, it makes you want to burst into tears, really. Just the cruelty, the sexual abuse, the grievous bodily harm, and then his murder. It's just shocking. Why would a couple like this go through the process of adopting a child and then proceed to abuse them in such a horrific manner? And of course, there were lies told along the way multiple times to hospitals, to different social workers, etc., etc. Lucy, as a psychotherapist, what can you tell us?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is a horrendous story, really heartbreaking details, and really quite shocking to learn that there were opportunities missed to perhaps save this young child. The process to adopt a child is very rigorous and quite long, so it's not something that people can do on a whim. But if you have the tendency to want to harm small people, children, abuse them, harm them in physical ways, but also maybe emotional ways as well, you will go to any lengths to do that, because it's never about the child or the infant. It's about you needing to get your perverted needs met. Now, the word perversion was used by Freud, 120 years ago, to talk about behavior that we find very troubling and very distorted from the normal human behavior. But unfortunately, power battles in relationships, particularly between parents and children, are extremely common. They're not as outrageously horrific as this particular case, but we know all too well that when you are in situations where somebody has an imbalance of power, they can often abuse that. And so what I see is that there are people who will go to any lengths in order to put themselves in a position where they have power and they can abuse it.
I mean, just looking at some of the detail on this, on some of the potential missed opportunities. So Preston's foster mother said she had to show the adoptive parents, these two men, virtually everything about looking after the baby. She said she called a social worker saying that she had a gut feeling that something was wrong. That was just one of the missed opportunities there. There were others at the hospital when consultants said, oh, no, there's nothing wrong with this bruising. It's just normal for a child when they're learning how to walk, etc., etc. Don't people have a gut instinct? Is there something potentially in there? The grandmother of this child suggested that perhaps the social services and others didn't want to say something because they didn't want to appear homophobic. Could there be truth to that? Psychologically, how would that work?
Well, you're absolutely right that there were plenty of opportunities missed, but our gut instinct is often incredibly accurate, but it's really hard to convey that to other people. What people in authority want is they want evidence and they want facts and things that they can verify. And if somebody came to you and said, well, I've got a hunch about this, it's very hard. And we're incredibly bad at actually trusting our own instinct, let alone trying to persuade other people, particularly those in authority, to trust our gut feeling about something. But at the same time, I think there is this idea that if somebody is absolutely determined to pull the wool over your eyes, and don't forget there would have been two people in this situation, singing from the same song sheet and saying, oh no, this is what was actually happening, then it would be harder for people in authority to go on the say of someone else who thinks, well, I've just got a hunch about this. And let's be clear, none of us are born knowing how to parent. We kind of learn it on the job. There are books and there are pieces of advice that we might get from friends and family, but ultimately you're on your own. And the very fact that two people might not have really understood how to parent or wouldn't have really known what to do isn't in and of itself a massive alarm bell. We're all just making it up as we go along, frankly.
No, the alarm bells really should be the repeated hospital trips. And what's particularly shocking about this is that there were 8 clear encounters, clear opportunities with not just social services, but medical practitioners, but people who really should know that a baby's arm doesn't break that easily, that the bruising that was seen was peculiar, that time and time again this baby was coming in and out of hospital, and these questions weren't asked. It's just the most shocking dereliction of duty, perhaps, on behalf of the NHS.
I mean, there's hideous a lack of joined-up thinking, really, that one person might have encountered this infant and come to some conclusion. But if they had been aware that this was now the 5th or 6th or 7th or 8th time in a very short period of time, particularly when the first 9 months of this infant's life were trouble-free, there hadn't been any incidents, and then suddenly moving to a different environment and being taken care of by a different set of people, there wasn't that sense of accumulation, the actual momentum that was building, that nobody seemed to be making a case for it, to say there are now historic precedents for this person coming into hospital on a repeated basis, and what is that about? Questions weren't really asked. Now, that's not really my area of expertise as to why the system failed. The system clearly did fail. The key thing is, why would people want to go to such lengths to adopt a child in order just to abuse it? And my only comment to that is that there are some very disturbed people out there who really have been damaged themselves and hurt themselves, but the background checks on these people really should have been much more intensive.
Well, Lucy Berethard, thank you very much indeed. Psychotherapist and broadcaster, thanks for talking to us about this hideous case. There was even a 999 call that one of the men made. And apparently 4 seconds into the call, the phone call was put down after someone in the background, which presumably was the other man in the relationship, said, put it down. So, and then they were called back and they said, oh, we were just trying to get through to the NHS or whatever. And it's just shocking, isn't it? I think there's no continuity of care. I don't know if there were sensitivities that potentially they didn't want to, you know, cast aspersions on a gay couple, because of course there is a lot of sort of stuff.
But you'd think that aspersions would be cast upon anyone who had taken a baby into hospital repeated times.
With all sorts of different couples.
I mean, it was like that Muslim child recently who had her beatings covered up with a burqa, Shara Sharif, or frankly Baby P, who was horrifically abused. I mean, there have been failings, repeated failings, with it's not just social services; it's the whole wraparound health and social.
Yeah, so far, no one's been given the sack over this. Should there be? Should someone be held accountable for this? The fact that this baby had to go through that traumatic short life. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up.
Well, could Dartmoor's iconic ponies face a mass cull? We'll have all the details.
Yeah, the Conservatives are saying save the ponies, aren't they?
They're saying it's Keir Starmer's pony cull. Are they right? Well, in the meantime, if you're in search of some holiday sunshine, perhaps take your mind off some of the more gruesome things, here's the weather in Europe.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
A heatwave is building across western parts of Europe at the moment, and that heat is going to be pushing further eastwards through the next few days. Whilst there is a lot of sunshine mixed in with it, and temperatures therefore getting into the mid to high 30s, possibly even low 40s, with that heat, worth bearing in mind, we could see some hefty thundery downpours developing across, well, many areas. Some heavy or more persistent rain affecting Greece as well through tomorrow. Otherwise, it's looking largely dry, often sunny and hot through the end of the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
You're a stripper for nearly 20 years now. Yeah. And what you do now has changed. How has it changed and why?
I think beforehand they would book you individually. There would be a lot of stripograms, and that would be bookings for like birthdays, hen parties, and ultimately you would probably be around their house or something like that, or in a small bar. What it's kind of moved into now is more shows. Dream Boys, it's really popular. It's up and down the country. And what you'll find is they'll get 20, 30 girls together and they'll go out and they'll go to the show because they've got the drag queen, they've got the dancers, they've got the stripper, they've got the whole night's entertainment.
Is that because they feel uncomfortable with the stripper, or is it a woke thing? Is it they're concerned about objectifying you because they don't want to objectify themselves, so why should you be objectified?
I think it could be possibly a bit about... some of them might think if we get them around the house, there might be a person that's uncomfortable with it. Whereas if they book the show, you're free to go to the show or not.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Princess Anne and the way that she has brought up her family is really interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, you've got daughter and son who've not taken on royal titles, who've just got on with their lives.
I think now, in retrospect, we can say it was an inspired decision of the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, not to have her husband receive a Grand Peerage title, which meant, of course, that her children would just be plain Mr. and Mrs. Zara is Mrs. Tyndall, he is Mr. Phillips, and that's allowed them actually to have a much more normal life, not being in the necessary glare that attaches when you have the HRH prefix to your name and become a duke or a duchess or whatever. And yes, they have had great lives in the private sector.
GB News, the People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Dorothea served in preparation for D-Day. And Dorothea, how does it feel being here today, joining other veterans?
We certainly felt that it had been worthwhile giving up our youth, our years as teenagers, no such things existed. You were a child until you were 14 or 16, depending on the year. And after that, OK, you're fit to be killed for the country. And it was naturally assumed that everybody would willingly do their bit for England. And they would have.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 1, and this year we're celebrating 5 whole years of GB News.
Oh, look, yes. On the 6th of August, we'll be holding events across the country and we want you to join us.
So, save the date, and if you want to be the first to hear about the day's plans and how to get involved, well, scan that QR code on your screen right now, or get out your tablet, phone or laptop and type in gbnews.com/celebrate.
Oh, this is going to be good, this is. I'm in the know. I'm in the know. Something very exciting indeed is happening on the 6th of August, so
People
you're
said
going to want to get involved.
last 6 months. They all said it. They said this channel will be shut down in a matter of weeks. Here we are, half a decade later, stronger than ever.
Feeling very happy indeed about that. 5 years, and it's all thanks to our lovely viewers who tune in every day.
Certainly is, absolutely. Could not do it without you, so thank you.
Fantastic stuff. Oh, we have really shaken things up. Can you imagine the British media landscape without GB News now? I can't.
No. Absolute staple, and in such a short time as well. Long time, but short time.
Such a good time. Beating our competitors left, right and centre. Anyway, this is an interesting one, well, a sad one, potentially. They're one of Britain's most recognisable sites, but campaigners are warning that Dartmoor's famous ponies face an uncertain future.
Yes, the species could all but disappear as a result of a controversial ruling by the government's environmental quango.
Yeah, so Natural England is the quango, and they've demanded that all livestock grazing on the moor is reduced by about 75% to protect other habitats, plants and species.
Well, joining us now is Parliament and Government's Relations Manager, David Bean. David, thanks indeed for joining us. This is a shocking story.
It is, absolutely. It's and I think your characterization there, Emily, particularly was well taken, because not everyone is getting this story quite right. But the answer is, as you've suggested, that Natural England is demanding that the stocking densities of all animals on Dartmoor be cut. And so that's going to put the graziers and the commoners who are grazing animals on the moor into a very difficult situation, because they don't want to cut the number of ponies that they have grazing there, but they're going to be forced to, because if they're going to continue to qualify for the environmental funding, which is a major component of their income as essentially varieties of farmers, then they're going to have to lose some stock numbers. And ultimately, they're not going to really be in a position where they can afford to lose the cows and the sheep that are making up the other main component of their income, which is what they get from commercial activity.
Right, well, it's quite a complex picture. David Bean, I'm terribly sorry, we're going to have to cut it short there, but thank you very much indeed. We'll speak again. David Bean there, Parliament and Government Relationship Manager.
At the Countryside Alliance.
At the Countryside Alliance. Now, Natural England has defended its position. This is Good Afternoon Britain. We're on GB News.
Absolutely. Lots more coming up on today's programme. Don't go anywhere. But first, let's take a quick look at the weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's time for your Met Office weather forecast for GB News. And now, through the next few days, we are going to see things turning hotter across parts of the southeast. Elsewhere, sticking with the slightly fresher feel with cloud and rain at times, all because of low pressure that's lurking to the northwest of us. And it's this that's driving various fronts across, and that's what we have at the moment. A fair amount of cloud for many through the end of today, and outbreaks of rain spilling their way in. The rain turning a bit heavier, a bit more persistent for most overnight, just some parts of the far southeast staying largely dry. There will be some breaks in the cloud in between those outbreaks of rain, but not many. And with all that cloud, it's going to be quite a warm, perhaps even muggy night for many of us. Temperatures holding up in the mid to high teens Celsius. Some coastal fog, though, developing around parts of the south and southwest. Into tomorrow morning then, and well, for most it's a cloudier and quite a wet start to the day. Some further outbreaks of rain, which could be a little bit on the heavy side and quite persistent across parts of Scotland through the morning. Starting to break up a little bit across Northern Ireland, but here a few showers pushing in, and then across the bulk of England and Wales, outbreaks of rain, and they could be heavy at times, all making their way eastwards as a result. Some parts of the east-southeast might not see a huge amount of rain until slightly later in the morning, but even here we are going to see the rain arriving, just perhaps Kent and Sussex staying largely dry with some sunshine breaking through here. Once the more persistent outbreaks of rain clear away towards the east, things will be turning dry by the afternoon, but there will still be a couple of showers for many of us too. Temperatures in the southeast down compared to today, but still feeling quite muggy, and elsewhere they're looking similar, so high teens or low 20s for most. A few more showery bursts of rain to come through the end of the day tomorrow, but it is going to turn a little bit drier with some clearer skies overnight into Thursday before more rain affects northern and western parts through the end of the week, and in the southeast we could see a bit of a heat wave developing.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to live the summer of your dreams.
With a totally tax-free £76,543.21 in tax-free cash to be won.
Someone really has to win it, and it could be you.
For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on a BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline.
Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 16th of June. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
And, you know, unfortunately, Keir is not Winston Churchill.
Well, the Prime Minister and Donald Trump come face to face on the border of Switzerland at the G7 summit. Yes, for the first time since that comment. With fresh sanctions on Russia and tensions simmering over defence spending, could this be a pivotal moment for Sir Keir Starmer as pressure mounts here at home?
Yes, and pressure mounting at home. Wes Streeting insists he has the backing needed to mount a leadership challenge if a contest is triggered.
Meanwhile, the National Crime Agency orders police forces to reinvestigate historic grooming gang allegations that go back as far as 2010.
And get this is extraordinary. London mansions literally are being advertised to social housing tenants for less than £750 a month. As the gap between social and private renting continues to widen, is the system becoming increasingly unfair? Now, 750 quid would get you a shoebox, wouldn't it?
Less
in the private rental market.
Hole in the road. Well, elsewhere, Elon Musk has launched a blistering attack on Sir Keir Starmer's social media ban for under-16s. Is the tech trillionaire right to brand Britain a police state?
And giddy up, the horses are ready, the hats are on, and Royal Ascot is underway.
Yeah, and it's been confirmed the King and Queen will be here in the first carriage during the royal procession at 2 p.m. And just as well, because Reaching High, their horse is running in the Ascot Stakes at 5 o'clock today. Who's your money on? All the details very shortly.
Now, Tom, if the social media plan, comes into action as the government wants it to, some things will be banned.
Yes, they will.
And some things, like this.
Hi guys, back from my holiday. See that? Tan. God, I need a haircut. Anyway, a few of you have been asking about questions, and I gave you enough time to comment now, so here are the answers. Yay!
Now, who is that charming and precocious young boy, you might ask?
That is a 13-year-old Tom Harwood.
You've always been the same, haven't you, Tom?
I'm actually finding
I've got the answers, Tom.
I'm just finding this quite strange, actually. Really, really strange, because we've got a set of politicians who are trying to sort of... And they never grew up with the same social media that we grew up with,
Well,
right?
let's be honest, a lot of them are actually, in their early 30s.
Early 30s, fine. I doubt many of them had exactly the same experience that we did, especially those
not many had
who
your
have
experience, Tom.
drafted the legislation. And I just find it incredibly peculiar. I feel like I'm going through some sort of cognitive dissonance here. While all of these politicians are coming out on television channels like this one, the ones that we spoke to yesterday, for instance, and just trying to convince me that I went through some form of child abuse growing up, that my childhood was horrific and awful and evil, and that no child should be subjected to what I was subjected to, i.e. a free and open internet. And I'm just sitting here just completely baffled, because I had a lovely childhood. I'm not a victim, and now politicians are trying to tell me that I'm a victim, and that perhaps I should be ashamed of having used the internet under the age of 16.
Yeah, but
I mean,
Tom, they would say it's not about you. It's about other children as well, who are using social media in an addictive manner at the moment. So if you took the YouTube interface, for example, from when you were making those funny little videos, I imagine it didn't have the scrolling effect. It didn't have the little clipped videos that go for 10 seconds and then you're immediately onto another one, immediately onto another one, and you just end up scrolling for hours and hours and hours. You were actually doing something creative there.
Sure.
Most people are consumers of this stuff. They're not creating videos. They're just, mindlessly scrolling.
You could also say that today the wealth of content on YouTube, particularly educational content, is so much better. The safety features on YouTube are so much more advanced. Back then it was a Wild West free-for-all when anyone could upload anything. Now there's AI scrapers that screen content for copyrighted material, illegal material. Stuff is taken down really quickly if it's dangerous. I mean, back then, people could watch the hanging of Saddam Hussein. They're on YouTube. You couldn't watch that these days. That would be taken down like that.
No, but
so
you
I think in some
find that on
ways,
X, though, couldn't you?
in some ways, you can say, OK, yes, it's different now, but in some ways it's much, much safer for children today than it was when I was there. And what I'm trying to say is we have millions, tens of millions of children who grow up with this stuff, and we're not damaged. People aren't damaged having used it. I'm just absolutely fed up of politicians trying to convince me that I'm some sort of victim. I'm not. It was fine.
Tom, you're no longer 13. It's OK. Don't worry. No one's taking away your YouTube. No one's taking it away.
I just don't want us to be the only generation who actually were allowed to grow up with this stuff.
I do agree. But I also do agree that a lot of this social media is extremely addictive and that children are getting dumber as a result. Anyway, gbnews.com/your say. Do get in touch on everything we're talking about today, but it is Sam Francis with the headlines.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. The top story this lunchtime: Sir Keir Starmer has defended his handling of defence spending after two ministers quit over claims the government's plans do not go far enough. Speaking at the G7 summit in France this afternoon, the Prime Minister said Britain's defence budget is rising, but admitted the next stage of military investment will involve difficult choices. He said the government's now having to make tough decisions about where funding is prioritised.
I have taken the decision to reallocate money from other departments. Obviously, the new Defence Secretary is reading in, and we're talking to him about how and what we will spend that money on in terms of the capability. And he's got his own thoughts now about what the priorities should be. And so I think that's the discussion we're in the middle of at the moment.
Well, away from the row over defence spending, Sir Keir Starmer's also using that G7 summit this week to step up pressure on Russia. Britain has announced today a new sanctions package targeting Moscow's shadow fleet and the finance networks helping fund Putin's war in Ukraine. The Prime Minister says Britain will keep increasing pressure until Russia's war machine is brought to a halt. The Conservatives have welcomed that pressure on Putin, but Alex Burkhardt said this morning that it's very hard to believe that the Prime Minister will take any real action.
What I'm very worried about is that the Prime Minister is going to the G7 making all of these promises, but he hasn't presented his defence investment plan, which is almost a year late. His Secretary of State for Defence resigned last week, John Healey, as did the Armed Forces Minister, because they said the Prime Minister is unable and the Chancellor is unwilling to do what's necessary to keep Britain safe. So I think that his colleagues at the G7 will be looking at him thinking, does this man really put his money where his mouth is? And is this the last time we're going to see him?
Also this lunchtime, the UK's largest water company has moved a step closer to nationalisation after the government objected to a proposed rescue deal. Thames Water serves around 16 million customers, but it's been heavily criticised over sewage spills, leaks and poor performance. Its lenders have offered to write off billions of pounds of debt and put new money into the company. But if no rescue deal's agreed, Thames Water could collapse within months, leaving ministers ready to step in and keep water and sewerage services running. The Environment Secretary, Emma Reynolds, says that the offer from the company's lenders doesn't go far enough to protect consumers or the environment.
Over the last 15 years, we've seen underperformance of Thames Water, pollution incidents and repeated failures. I have written to Ofwat to set out my early concerns that the creditors' proposals don't do enough to protect consumers and the environment, and overall, I don't want Thames Water's consumers to have to pick up the bill for their failures.
8 closed grooming gang cases are being sent back to police after a major review found potential lines of inquiry may have been missed. The National Crime Agency is looking at cases from 2010 to 2025 where no further action was taken. The review focuses on investigations involving multiple suspects and victims, including allegations of rape. The NCA says it is the most comprehensive and complex investigation into child sexual exploitation and abuse in UK history. Prince George will attend Eton College from this September, following in the footsteps of his father, the Prince of Wales. Kensington Palace confirmed this afternoon the 12-year-old will become a pupil at the world-famous private school. George is currently at Lambrook School, where he studies alongside his younger siblings, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis. And some sport for you. Tennis superstars Serena and Venus Williams are heading back to Wimbledon together after being handed a wild card for the women's doubles. They'll return to the All England club as a pair, with Serena continuing her comeback just 4 years after many thought she had played her final match of her career. The sisters are, of course, among the biggest names in the history of the sport, with Serena winning 7 Wimbledon single titles and Venus winning 5. Neither sister has yet been given a singles wild card, although there is still one place available. Those are the latest headlines for now. Next, quick look at the lunchtime markets.
Taking the ups and downs in our stride. Stilts Home Lifts sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Just coming up to 10 minutes past 1, the markets for you. The pound will buy $1.3419 and €1.1567. The price of gold, £3,237 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 10,490 points.
GB News Finance Report, brought to you by Stilts Home Lifts.
Can I just say how much love there is coming in for little tiny Tom, little tiny Tommy?
And can we just be clear, that's not me now, that's me, aged 13, that was little and tiny.
Renee says, little Tommy is adorable. Oh, Tom should be Prime Minister. Oh,
Absolutely
Tom was
not.
made for the television. Gorgeous Tom.
Goodness me, where did it all go wrong? I peaked aged 13, I think.
You did. Little tiny Justin Bieber, if only he could sing, eh?
Every single child in the country in 2009 had that haircut.
It's cute, it's cute. Anyway, on to serious matters. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, has vowed to take immigration decisions out of the hands of judges if the Conservatives return to power.
Well, the Shadow Home Secretary says the Home Office should make rulings and instead they should go through that fast-track internal process rather than externally with judges.
OK, well, joining us now is the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. Chris Philp, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Can you just explain what you mean when you say you're taking these rulings out of the hands of judges?
Good afternoon. Well, at the moment, so many decisions about deporting illegal immigrants or foreign criminals are ultimately made by the courts in the immigration tribunal, and often these decisions defy common sense. For example, there was a Zimbabwean paedophile who was prevented from being deported back to Zimbabwe because the court decided he would face hostility in Zimbabwe as a paedophile. That is ridiculous. What about the rights of children here to be protected? There was another case where an Iraqi drug dealer wasn't deported back to Iraq because the court decided he'd become, quote, too westernised. Well, I don't want drug dealers from any country in this country. They should all be, frankly, deported. So what's the solution to this? Well, first of all, it is to abolish the immigration tribunal and immigration legal aid completely, so these decisions get taken internally in the Home Office. Secondly, we need to come out of the ECHR and repeal the Human Rights Act, so that can't get used. Very often, modern slavery claims are fabricated to prevent the deportation of foreign criminals and illegal immigrants, so we need to end all of that as well. And we also need to end judicial review on almost all grounds, apart from the government acting outside its legal powers. So, for example, if the government tried to deport a British citizen or someone who is here legally. All of those changes I made would take these decisions out of judges' hands and return them to the hands of democratically elected ministers. Parliament would be able to set the rules and would use that freedom to deport all illegal immigrants, for example, small boat illegal immigrants, within a week of arrival, and deport all foreign criminals. At the moment, those things aren't happening.
It's a sweeping set of changes, but how many of these changes that you listed there are dependent on the second one that you laid out, i.e. leaving the ECHR? That would seem to be a sort of backstop that many illegal immigrants have in terms of appealing their case, and it might take years to leave.
Well, you're right that the ECHR is a cross-cutting problem, and we definitely need to leave the ECHR in order to do what I just described. But you've got to leave the ECHR and also do all of those other things as well. It wouldn't take years to leave. It's not like leaving the European Union. It's very different to that. To leave the ECHR, you simply need to give 6 months' notice, and then you, 6 months later, cease to be bound by its obligations. Freed from the restrictions of the ECHR, we would then need to change domestic legislation. I've given a few examples, like modern slavery legislation. We'd need to change asylum legislation to ban illegal immigrants from claiming asylum, those kind of things. But we're working on those plans right now, so if we're successful in forming the next government, we'd do that on day one.
There's a difficulty, though, with case law. With our common law system, since we've had the Human Rights Act particularly, but also membership of the ECHR, we've got lots of different judicial decisions that set precedent. I mean, can those be unpicked?
Yes, they can. You have to unpick them with primary legislation, with laws passed by Parliament. So, for example, you would, outside the ECHR, you would have the freedom to pass a law that says illegal immigrants can't claim asylum, and the courts would not be able to unpick that using the ECHR. You could pass the law, change the modern slavery laws, so that people with modern slavery claims can't avoid being deported if they're foreign criminals or illegal immigrants. At the moment, inside the ECHR, you'd find there'd be an ECHR Article 4 claim. So you would need to change the domestic law to erase the case law you've mentioned, but we're doing the work. We've done much of the work on that already. I've given 2 examples just now, so it can be done. But we're the Conservative Conservatives are the only party who are actually doing the detailed work. You've probably gathered from the comments I've made in the last few minutes, there is quite a lot of legal complexity here. You can't just make bold statements, you've got to do the detailed work, and that is what we have been doing. We've been doing the detailed work, we've got a credible plan that will fix these issues once and for all, because I think public trust in politics has been terribly undermined by the failures on illegal immigration, foreign criminals, and that's why the changes I've set out today are so radical.
Well,
we've got to dismantle the entire system in order to fix this.
Yeah, on that very issue of trust, though, Chris Philp, it was revealed that the suspect in the hideous Belfast stabbing attack was likely to have received fast-track refugee status in Northern Ireland. At the time the Conservatives were in power, 96% of Sudanese at that time were being granted asylum. It was basically a free-for-all if you happened to come from that country at the time when there was a raging war going on. There's a huge trust issue. The Conservatives let in huge numbers of people without proper vetting, fast-track, not even face-to-face interviews at that time. How can we trust the Conservatives that you're going to actually crack down on what you say you are?
Well, I think it was completely wrong, to be honest, that happened in 2023. He should never have been given fast-track asylum. The then Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, and the then Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, I think made a big mistake by doing that. I think it was wrong, and that's why the policy that I've now introduced is completely different. I'm the new Shadow Home Secretary, and I've completely changed our policy. And in the speech I gave at Policy Exchange just a few minutes ago, I set out the detail of how that would work. So I'm not just saying, like, trust us, we'll do it.
Would you
I've
have,
set out
would
the
you have visa bans
detailed,
from
credible
some
plans.
Would you have visa bans from some countries, then, from some dangerous countries, if you're worried about illegal migrants coming in and getting asylum from who could potentially be violent, for example, or dangerous?
Well, when it comes to illegal immigration from all countries, illegal immigrants just need to be deported within a week of arrival, full stop, regardless of which country they come from. Every illegal immigrant should be deported within a week of arrival. In terms of visas for legal migration, I think we need to get a lot tougher, particularly from countries where there are high rates of criminality or where there are high numbers of asylum claims. I would like to completely end mass low-skill migration into the UK. We should only be allowing a small number of high-skilled migrants into the country, partly for economic reasons, but also for public safety and, frankly, social reasons as well.
What sort of numbers do you think, sort of annual? Would there be a cap?
Well, yes, there would be a hard, binding annual cap set each year by Parliament at levels that are far lower than we've seen recently, including the numbers we're seeing this most recent year, 2025, far lower numbers. In fact, last year, 2025, 600,000 people entered the UK from outside Europe. That number is insanely too high. We will in due course set out what the number would be under our cap. Parliament would set it each year. But when it comes to low-skilled migration for work, that number should be zero.
Well, Chris Philp,
because we have 9 million people here of working age who are not working.
Well, Chris Philp, that's all we've got time for, but thank you indeed for joining us here on GB News and setting out this new policy from the Conservative Party.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, in the meantime, at this very moment, the Prime Minister is in France, in Evian, with G7 leaders. He's promising new sanctions on Russia and nuclear energy support for Ukraine.
If only we could have some nuclear energy support for ourselves. Meanwhile, sharks are circling back home as Wes Streeting has insisted this morning he has the number of MPs required to trigger a leadership contest.
Well, joining us now is GB News chief political correspondent Catherine Forster. Yes, Catherine, the Prime Minister is in France. He's at the G7 summit. But back home, potential Labour leadership contenders are very much vocal.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I was just at Wes Streeting, the former health secretary till he resigned just a few weeks ago, laying out his economic vision for the country in this very smart office block overlooking Tower Bridge. He spoke for 50 minutes and then took a whole lot of questions. He claims that he's got the 81 names for a leadership contest. But I said to him, can you 100% guarantee that you're going to run? Because the polling basically would suggest that you've got no hope. I also asked him about net zero, but let's see what he said in response to me first.
Firstly, I'm bitterly disappointed, Catherine, that GB News, of all outlets, would question whether a plucky underdog could triumph over the tyranny of low expectations. Lots of people wrote your station off, said it would be a total flop, you'd fall flat on your face, and yet here you are. And aren't we really glad of it on the left of politics? But there is a serious point here, which is, yes, for the avoidance of doubt, for the umpteenth time, I will be standing.
Yeah, so Wes Treating there, enjoying, I think, having a joke at our expense. But look at us now, 5 years on, just celebrated our 5th birthday, the UK's #1 news channel. But I also asked him about net zero because he was talking about reindustrialisation. He was talking about the need for cheap electricity. We have got the highest industrial energy prices in the G7. Clearly, that inhibits our ability to get the growth that we so desperately needed. So he has said about drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea that he thinks that there is a pragmatic case for that. I said to him, has Ed Miliband got it wrong? He obviously didn't want to say that because he may have a job in government with him pretty quickly, but he said that no final decisions had been made by Ed Miliband on Jackdaw and Rosebank. So we will see. But Wes Treating very clearly setting out his stall for the Prime Minister's job while the Prime Minister is elsewhere.
Absolutely fascinating. It will be one to watch when this contest actually kicks off, perhaps sooner rather than later. But Catherine, thanks indeed for being there live in Westminster for us. We'll keep following this one closely.
Absolutely. Wes Treating turning on the charm there, wasn't he? Having a little giggle. Yes, we've got some breaking news to bring you. Thanks, Catherine. Into us at GB News. So, 710 Channel migrants have crossed illegally from France on Monday, the biggest single day of crossings this year.
Well, a total of 11 migrant boats made it across into British waters on Monday. Now, that 710 total beats the previous highs of the previous day for crossings, when 605 illegal migrants arrived in Britain on the 25th of February.
So 710 just yesterday.
I mean, it does start to reverse the narrative, because the government had been putting out a narrative for a little bit saying, look how much lower migrant arrivals have been than the year before. I think it's about a third lower. Now, where have we heard that one before? So about a third lower, but now it seems to have another spurt. And it tends to do this. It sort of goes up, it has a flat period, and then has a spurt, and then has a flat period and goes up. So I don't think we'll be able to say definitively whether these migrant numbers have actually plateaued, whether the increased French activity is actually doing the job, because the incentives are still there for people to come across. As soon as they make it into British waters, they know they'll be able to claim asylum in this country.
Well, that's exactly the point. And if a group of individuals are stopped once, that does not mean that they're not going to try again the next day or the next week or the next month or 6 months later, even. Anyway, this year we're celebrating 5 years of GB News. Yes, on the 6th of August, we'll be holding events across the country, and we want you to join us.
Absolutely. Save this date. And if you want to be the first to hear about the day's plans and how to get involved, well, you can scan that quick response code on the screen, that slightly peculiar square that's standing in between all of us. Or you can go to gbnews.com/celebrate for all the information.
I did not know it was called a quick response.
That's what QR stands for.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So there you go. You learn something new every day.
Every day's a school day.
Yeah. Every day's a school day. Anyway, come celebrate with us on the 6th of August. We'll let you know what you're in for later down the line.
Absolutely. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's programme.
Well, Elon Musk has launched a blistering attack on Sir Keir Starmer's social media ban for under-16s. Is the tech trillionaire right to brand Britain a police state?
But after the break, London mansions are being advertised to social housing tenants for less than £750 a month. As the gap between social and private renting continues to explode, is this system becoming increasingly unfair?
Yes, all of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
the Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong Tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late-night TV shows. We're giving you a front-row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 28 minutes past 1. Now get this. Multi-million-pound mansions in London are being advertised to benefit claimants for as little as £750 a month, sparking claims that the subsidies have simply gone too far.
Yes, the social housing trading website HomeSwapper includes listings for a 7-bedroom terraced house by Brockwell Park in South London for just £744 per month, and a 2-bed Notting Hill maisonette for £720.
Well, Britain spends the most of any OECD country on housing allowances. Has it all gone too far? Joining us is the Head of Housing and Infrastructure at the Centre for Policy Studies, Ben Hopkinson. Ben, the gap between what people can get through the state versus what people have to fork out privately has never been bigger.
Yes, it's absolutely massive, just the sheer amount of subsidy involved within the system. So we're, in London alone, spending about £18 billion subsidising people to be living in the most expensive property market in the country.
Is that per year?
You know, yes, that's per year. And if you're getting a kind of 7-bed terraced house in Brixton for £750 a month, that's just nowhere near what a young graduate might be able to afford. They're looking at £1,000, £1,200 for a small bedroom in a cramped shared flat. It's just completely ridiculous, the gap between the two.
Well, how much would a 7-bedroom house near Brockwell Park in South London cost if you wanted to rent it on the private market?
Oh, that's well above £6,000 or £7,000. So just this one social home is subsidised £60,000 a year.
I mean, it's extraordinary when you talk about the numbers like that, the amount of money that could be saved by the government if we had a sort of reallocation. But isn't the problem here, Ben, that the original values of these properties in many cases was a lot lower when this was all set in the 1990s, and they just haven't been updated since? And if we had a more rational system that updated every few years, well, we could have a much more rational system, but politicians don't want to do it.
Yes, that's definitely one of the causes. The other is that these tenancies are so lucrative that you'll stay in them for, the rest of your life pretty much. And the government caps the amount that the rent can go up. So people talk about rent freezes, but we already have those in social housing. So you're protected against, the massive rental inflation we've seen in the private market that, the young graduates have been faced with. So that's one of the main drivers of the big gap in subsidy for these social.
Yeah. I guess the argument would be that this 7-bedroom mansion near Brockwell Park is needed for potentially a family who are in dire straits with 8 kids.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the argument. But you'd have to wonder, is spending £60,000 a year subsidising them to live in one of the nicest neighbourhoods in London a good use of taxpayers' money? Especially considering that more than 40% of working-age social tenants in London are out of work, don't work at all. So there's a real question about fairness here.
Yeah, what about the foreign nationals suggestion from Nigel Farage? He says that we should just go ahead, give 3 months, all foreign nationals booted out of social housing, and there you go.
Well, I think that's probably a good start, but we really have to think about whether we need these £1 million social homes to be social homes at all. So the government is right now planning to repeal a law that would have allowed us to sell off these £1 million social homes and then take the proceeds and actually build more homes with them. So that's kind of a good place to start, is don't do that and actually implement that so we can sell off these really expensive social homes. Stop the subsidy.
Ben, the government's going to repeal a law that would allow them. So if I got this straight, I mean, a house like that might be worth £2 or £3 million. We're talking about one of the nicest neighbourhoods in London. The government could sell that, build a dozen social homes, house a dozen families with the proceeds of selling this ridiculously extravagant social home. This one ridiculously extravagant social home. But the government is going to repeal the law that would allow them to do that.
Yes, yeah, they are. That's exactly right, Tom. So they had the law on the books from about 2016. Theresa May's government never decided to actually implement it, and now it's being repealed when it could be used to resolve these kind of absurd levels of subsidy.
Well, Ben Hopkinson, thank you very much indeed, Head of Housing and Infrastructure at the Centre for Policy Studies think tank. It does make you think maybe I should just stay at home and pop out a few more kids.
Honestly, if you can get £60,000 worth of subsidies alone, and you don't have to be in work for it, actually, you're privileged on the social housing wait list if you don't have a job. I mean, you're better off not working. You genuinely, if you're in that social house, you are better off not getting a job.
But you have to have a lot of kids to fill that house. They wouldn't give that to you as a single person, would they?
Oh, the incentives are right for themselves, don't they?
And also all the child benefit after the cap's been lifted.
Oh, my goodness. You're going to have a £100,000 payday,
But you have tens of thousands of Brits waiting for social housing in London and other areas of the country. I do think the foreign nationals taking social housing is a bit of a mug's game.
But one of the fascinating and slightly counterintuitive things is we've got the 4th highest level of social housing in the OECD. Yeah. We've got an enormous amount of social housing. 1 in 3 houses, or I think it might be 1 in 4 houses in some boroughs, but 1 in 3 houses in many boroughs, is a social home. How many more social homes? At what point do we need to realise actually fewer people should be in social housing? We need to bring down the cost of renting for everyone else, which means building more houses.
Absolutely.
Rant over.
Yeah, we need more houses across the board. A government spokesperson said, we're building more social housing to help hard-working families and lift children out of poverty and homelessness. This is alongside taking steps to reduce disparities between rents paid for social homes in different areas.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more still to come on today's programme. But in the meantime, let's get a quick update with those latest news headlines.
Very Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom. The lunchtime headlines. Sir Keir Starmer's defended his handling of defence spending, saying money will be moved from other government departments to strengthen Britain's armed forces. Speaking at the G7 summit in France today, the Prime Minister said he will not walk away from the job, insisting he was elected to deliver change despite growing pressure over his leadership. Prince George will attend the prestigious Eton College from this September, following in the footsteps of his father, the Prince of Wales. Kensington Palace has confirmed the 12-year-old will join the school, which also educated the Duke of Sussex. The UK's largest water company, Thames Water, has moved a step closer to nationalisation after the government objected to a proposed rescue deal. Concerns the company could collapse first emerged 3 years ago. The Environment Secretary says the £10 billion bailout doesn't do enough to protect customers.
My priority is to secure the best outcome for consumers and the environment, and I don't want Thames Water's consumers to have to pick up the bill for the company's failures.
These closed grooming gang cases have been referred back to police forces for re-investigation. The National Crime Agency is reviewing hundreds of files where potential lines of inquiry may have been missed. And major tech firms are today warning Sir Keir Starmer's social media ban for under-16s could push children into less regulated and less safe corners of the internet. The Prime Minister says the ban is needed to protect children's mental health. But companies including Meta, YouTube and TikTok say they already have safeguards in place. Those are the latest headlines. More news at 2.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Well, thanks, Sam. We've got lots more coming up. Yes, Elon Musk has launched another blistering attack on Sir Keir Starmer, this time on the social media ban for under-16s. Is the tech trillionaire right to brand Britain a police state?
Well, all of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Now, depending where you are in the UK today, there's going to be quite a different feel to things. In the southeast, it's going to be very warm, if not hot. Further north and west, a cloudier, cooler feel because we have low pressure to the northwest of the UK, and that's driving some fronts across us. And these fronts are bringing a lot of cloud and also some outbreaks of rain. The rain doesn't look particularly heavy and it's quite intermittent across northern parts through the bulk of the day, but more persistent rain pushing into parts of Wales and southwest England later on. More central eastern parts of England having a generally fine day. Lots of bright sunny weather breaking through the cloud, and temperatures here peaking in the mid to high 20s, so feeling very warm or hot, markedly fresher towards the north and west. Into this evening, and we're sticking with the quite cloudy theme across much of Scotland. Still some outbreaks of rain around, nothing particularly heavy. There could be some blustery winds in a few spots, but they're not especially strong. It's a similar story across Northern Ireland, so quite cloudy, a few spots of rain here and there. And then heading further south across, well, northern England, it's turning a bit wetter towards southwestern parts here. That's because of some rain spilling its way in from the southwest across western parts of England and also Wales. That then continues its progress further eastwards overnight. So most places, apart from the far southeast, will see some rain, and it could be persistent for a little while, but it will break up and there'll be some drier, perhaps even clear weather around before some more heavier bursts of rain come in from the southwest towards dawn. Temperatures not dropping a huge amount, most places staying in the mid to high teens Celsius, so a pretty warm night for many of us. And then tomorrow, a cloudier day in the southeast, and there will be some rain pushing through. The rain will be a little bit heavy at times across some southern parts of England as it makes its way eastwards across. Further north, and it's a showery day, so some breaks in the rain, and there might even be a bit of sunshine breaking through the cloud as well. Temperatures in the southeast down on today, elsewhere looking similar.
Thank you, Britain, for all of you who listen to GB News Radio.
Whether you're at home or on the go, you're making us Britain's news channel and Britain's radio station.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. A severe collision on the M40 near junction 15 in Salford has shut all lanes, causing a 15-minute delay. Traffic is expected to normalise by 3:45 p.m. Meanwhile, congestion is growing between junctions 15 and 16 on the M40 due to a vehicle breakdown affecting travel times. In Kent, motorists on the A20 eastbound face disruptions with some lanes closed after a breakdown. And on the trains, Great Western Railway is running a reduced schedule between Exeter Central and Okehampton, affecting commuter travel options. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 20 to 2, and Elon Musk has joined the row over proposals to restrict social media access for younger users, raising concerns about free speech and government intervention for the rest of us.
Yeah, he's gone as far as to say the UK is a police state and added, this censorship law is a wolf in sheep's clothing. The real goal is to enable the UK government to track everyone.
Well, joining us now is AI and disinformation expert and former number 10 advisor, Marcus Beard. Marcus, thanks indeed for joining us. Is it a fair criticism of Elon Musk to point to not just the children who'll be affected, because obviously they will, but the rest, the adult users of the internet, who will now need to prove their identity to prove they're not children in order to use the internet as before?
I think Elon Musk is... infrequently, as I agree with him, he has a point on the difficulties of implementing this and the challenges that's going to introduce, as you say, for everyone. I think there's no doubt that social media can be harmful to children and to adults, but what particularly happened with the Online Safety Act and the age verification is that it's actually become very hard to enforce. What's happened is when people hit these age verification platforms, age verification solutions, is that they decide they don't want to do them, and then they install a VPN or they go onto sites that don't require them, that are breaking the law, and therefore they're in much less regulated, much less safe spaces. I think a lot of the stuff Elon Musk has said in this tirade is maybe not so much about this policy, but of a growing opposition to Keir Starmer and the current government policy around online safety. He was probably cost a big chunk of revenue after the pressure put on him, the rightful pressure put on X to stop the creation, sharing and generation of non-consensual sexual images on his platform. So when all the pressure was put on and potential X ban came along, he had to take that off the platform, and that meant that the sort of $200 Grok extra subscription became much less appealing to people. So I think he's got a bone to pick with Keir Starmer, but for sure there are definitely issues with a blanket ban on social media that will affect children and their access to information, and also adults and their access to information too.
Yeah, I mean, the Labour government have said that they want to, crack down on social media use during times of crisis. This is something that Elon Musk has leapt upon. A lot of people concerned that would mean that images or videos of things that have actually taken place on British streets would be censored because they don't suit the current ideology of this government.
I think talking about cracking down on social media platforms, I'm sure the intention there is not to stop the sharing of, truthful, helpful, useful information. 10 years ago, citizen journalism happening on X in the UK and in other countries was supported and praised. Where I think the action needs to come, and I think that's where the government is directing this, is on the intensely, first of all, just divisive, hateful content on these platforms that often springs up in times of crisis from people trying to stir up divisions, whether that's states or people trying to make money, but also just the outright misinformation and disinformation. Before the Southport unrest and after the horrific Southport incident, we saw false names being shared on these platforms, being shared and being amplified very quickly. So I think it's right to be taking action in those places. And
yeah, I just worry that the facts change, though, Marcus. Something someone might think is misinformation one day, and actually it turns out to be true. And yes, that does happen vice versa. But I think you've got to be, do you trust the government and the regulators associated with the government to decide what is truth? It's a bit risky, isn't it?
Exactly, for sure. And as I said, I've worked in the government in disinformation, and we in countering disinformation, and we tried very hard. We sort of set it as red lines that it was not our job to decide what was true and what was not. And in the application of these policies, it's about enabling a level of transparency on these platforms so that people have more informed decision making to decide whether a source is trustworthy or not. So X, again, partially from the pressure from the UK government, recently introduced a location transparency feature. So you could see where accounts were actually posting from. Now, it turned out loads and loads of these accounts talking about UK decline, crime on our streets caused specifically by migration, were actually not based in the UK.
That's true, but some people are using just VPNs, aren't they? Because they want to get around some controls.
These ones were not. This is actually it's a well-documented network of people from overseas.
Okay.
Now, don't like I am a huge proponent of social media in general, the internet in general. What a hard to overstate the massive positive impact it's had on our lives. But over the last 10 years, it has also taken a bit of a dark turn as people are trying to...
OK, Marcus, we're going to have to wrap it up there, but thank you very much indeed for your time. Marcus Beard, AI and disinformation expert, former number 10 advisor. Yeah,
I have to say, when I use a VPN, I usually pretend that I'm in Estonia or in the Netherlands. I've never, ever pretended to be in Pakistan or India, which is where almost all of these disinformation accounts are pumping out their AI nonsense.
AI slop. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up. Yes, the horses are ready, the hats are on. Royal Ascot is underway. We're going to take you there live. Check on Cameron Walker.
Oh, absolutely. But in the meantime, if you'd like to get some sunshine elsewhere, well, here's the weather in Europe. Oh, we can't...
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
A heatwave is building across western parts of Europe at the moment, and that heat is going to be pushing further eastwards through the next few days. Whilst there is a lot of sunshine mixed in with it, and temperatures therefore getting into the mid to high 30s, possibly even low 40s, with that heat, worth bearing in mind, we could see some hefty thundery downpours developing across, well, many areas. Some heavy or more persistent rain affecting Greece as well through tomorrow. Otherwise, it's looking largely dry, often sunny and hot through the end of the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
We're going to take you live to the House of Commons now, where the former Defence Secretary John Healey is giving his resignation speech.
Phone calls. And I'm proud of what we've done in less than 2 years as a Labour government. We've stepped up international leadership for Ukraine. We've raised defence investment 3 years earlier than anyone expected. Won record defence export deals. Given the armed forces their biggest pay rise for 20 years, brought 36,000 Forces family homes back into public ownership. And we've signed major defence agreements with Germany, Norway, France and the European Union. Delivering for defence, delivering for Britain. And the Prime Minister has led this drive, rightly earning respect at home and abroad. He and I jointly commissioned the first of its kind strategic defence review, which has set the vision to transform our armed forces, to make our military more war-fighting ready, better able to deter. And we've been doing exactly this in the 12 months since the SDR was published. Delivering in a different way. Investment with deep reforms to get a grip of budgets, procurement and delivery. Investment so that every taxpayer's pound works twice, once for national security and once to back British industry, create British jobs. Investment in new defence tech, drones and AI that draw lessons from Ukraine for our own UK forces. And I will always seek cross-party common ground on defence, but I won't let the Conservatives forget their record in government or the hollowed-out legacy they left in our armed forces. Mr. Speaker, since the SDR, we've seen the world changing still faster, with threats increasing and demands on defence rising. Conflict in the Middle East, new NATO missions in the High North, The US moving forces away from Europe, intensifying attacks in Ukraine, and increasing Russian aggression towards the UK. NATO has now said we must prepare for war with Russia within the next 5 years. This is the age of hard power and rising threat. This is not the moment for calibration or incremental change. This means bigger politics, bolder priorities, harder choices. And Britain's challenge now is the transformation and the rearmament of our armed forces. The Prime Minister knows what the country needs for defence. He spelled out the threat this month when he said, "It is our intelligence assessment and the assessment of other countries in NATO that there could be an attack by Russia on NATO as soon as 2030. So Britain must set the headmark of spending 3% on defence in 2030 and a clear path to 3.5% in 2035, the commitment all NATO nations have made to each other and to their people. And I believe this would command wide cross-party support. Mr. Speaker, our predecessors in this House experienced what happens when deterrence fails. Our predecessors in this House entrusted us with institutions like NATO that they created to keep us safe. We don't choose the circumstances in which we serve or the responsibilities that fall upon us either in this House or in government. And it's the duty of our political generation now to ready Britain for the uncertainties of the years to come. And the decisions that we make in the months ahead will be judged by those who follow us. At this dangerous time, I see the current defence investment plans falling well short of what is required. A rise of 0.08% from next year to 2030, no date for reaching 3%, no path to 3.5%. By 2030, well over half of NATO members will be spending 3% or more. And when allies are looking for British leadership, we must not fall behind. When NATO needs European nations to step up, we must not fall short. Our adversaries don't follow timetables set by the Treasury. I appreciate how hard this is for Cabinet colleagues, and I'm very grateful to those who support what's required. But not all needs to be done by cutbacks elsewhere. There are credible ways of meeting the mid-term funding challenges, working multinationally, and as other nations in Europe are doing. That could allow us to protect the ability to deliver our Labour missions across government. Beyond this, Mr. Speaker, we need a bigger view of national security. It's not just the job for defence or the agencies. Every department has a part to play in national security and national resilience. From energy to transport to health. Security must run through the government like letters through a stick of rock. And security must be felt in the communities right across Britain, reversing long-term decline and bringing new jobs and new hope. For now, Jackie's just grateful I no longer carry 3 phones in my bag, although I do still have my bottle of HP sauce.
We now come to the next personal statement. Al Cairns.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I'd like to make a speech on my resignation. I want to start by echoing the remarks of so many in the House on the 10th anniversary of the death of Jo Cox. Whilst I did not know Jo, I know what she stood for. Her unwavering commitment to equality has left a lasting legacy, and her words still ring true: more in common than divide us. Still true and still worth fighting for. I'd also like to pay tribute to my right honourable friend from Rosshaw and Coningsborough. This is the second time I have followed you this week, and it's a privilege to do so. Last week I resigned as a Minister for the Armed Forces. It was an exceptionally difficult decision. I've never quit anything in my life, and my mother will confirm that. She tried to get me to quit the Marines for 24 years, but she failed many times. But I spent those 24 years in uniform. I served in operations around the world. I commanded men and women in combat and carried responsibility for their lives. I buried friends and stood beside families receiving the worst news imaginable. So when I accepted ministerial office, I did so with a simple purpose: to serve those that serve us. I remain grateful to the Prime Minister for the opportunity to do so. I thank my ministerial colleagues, the individuals on this side of the House, civil servants, and above all, the servicemen and women I have had the privilege to represent. But there comes a point when honesty requires action, and for me, that point came last week. As honourable members know, I came into politics for one reason, and that was to enact change. But to be able to work out where you're going, we must realise where we have come from. The Labour Party I joined is one that was chiselled out of the mines of the North East. It was hammered out of the shipyards of Govan, Liverpool and Belfast, and it was forged in the factory of the sore backs, people who did a hard day's graft and asked for one thing in return: a government that has their back. That's the tradition I serve in this House, and it's the tradition that shaped that decision I took last week. And I resigned for several reasons. Firstly, because I no longer believed the Defence Investment Plan was preparing for the wars we are most likely to fight. The character of warfare is changing at an exceptional speed. In Ukraine, a navy without a ship has destroyed a navy. A drone costing thousands can destroy a tank costing millions. A drone can now strike 2,000 kilometres into Russia at a fraction of the cost of a fighter jet. It is not either or. It's an equitable mix of high-end sophistication coupled with low-end mass. That's the balance we must seek, but from my view, the Defence Investment Plan did not strike that balance, for various reasons. I want to give just a small example to bring that home, because it can be often lost. In a town in Ukraine similar to the same size as Hereford, in one day, there were 12,000 drones in the air. Just comprehend that, 12,000 drones in the air, and 90% of all casualties are from drones. Not the rifle, not the grenade, not the tank, not the artillery, but from drones. What will it take? I asked the House, what will it take to realise these figures are not fiction? They're not an embellishment of the truth, but a hard fact born out of the blood and the steel of a hot war. That is the maths of modern war. Millions of drones against high-end sophisticated systems that deliver late with huge levels of inflation and, importantly, cannot be reproduced at the pace required to sustain a conflict against a major adversary. What will it take to learn this lesson? Do we need to rerun the snatched Land Rover? Do we need to rerun the lack of body armour? Do we need to rerun the lack of protected vehicles in Afghanistan that I saw impact men and women in the front line? We do not, and we should not. Moreover, as the clouds of war darken Europe's border once more, do we need to learn the lessons our forefathers learnt in World War II or indeed the Cold War? This isn't about individual items of equipment or bespoke defence funding lines, but about preparedness, about unity of purpose, prioritisation and national resilience. We are no longer packaging up our military to deploy to a foreign field, but being ready to fight from here, fight from the home base, for democracy, for the right to self-determination and for European security. The reality is we are spending too much time preparing for last year's war, not tomorrow's. And I urge the House to push for transformation, push hard and push for delivery this side of 2030. Secondly, because even if the plan had been right, it was not adequately funded. I do not lay all the blame at number 10 or number 11. We failed, I failed to make that conversation and that argument. But national security and economic security are not competing priorities. They are the same priority. A country that cannot defend itself will not stay prosperous for long. Put simply, a country that cannot defend itself will struggle to protect its prosperity. And thirdly, I left because I could no longer ignore the continued failure to address the treatment of our veterans in Northern Ireland. It's a difficult issue, and I cannot describe how difficult this fight has been. Whatever the view people have of the Troubles, a country owes a duty to those it sent into harm's way under lawful orders. That duty does not end when that uniform comes off. The Labour movement was built on a simple idea, that the people who do the hard work this country asks of them deserves the backing of the state in return. Too many veterans have carried uncertainty for too long, while others have benefited from political accommodations that were never available to those who served, and I could not reconcile that with my own understanding of duty. But, Mr. Speaker, in slightly more detail, the IRA failed to achieve its political ends through the use of terrorist tactics. We must be exceptionally careful that we do not help them achieve those ends through other means. Constant, never-ending legal wranglings that undermine the contract between the nation and those that serve is neither a good use of taxpaying money nor an effective execution of strategy. Inquests, inquiries, and an independent commission creates a hierarchy of truth. It will cost us hundreds of millions for 15 years. Painting the state as an aggressor, supporting our adversaries, political objections, and causing untold anguish for those that only ever deployed to protect us. We have neither the political capital nor the resources to spare for this unjust journey. In broader terms, in 2026, security means more than military strength alone. It means secure borders, secure energy, secure jobs, and secure communities. It means knowing that if you work hard and contribute, one unexpected bill will not push your family into crisis. It means knowing your children will have opportunities you did not. These things are connected. They absolutely are. The cost of living is shaped by conflict thousands of miles from here. Hostile states target our infrastructure, our supply chains, our democracy. Energy security shapes economic security. Economic security shapes social cohesion. And importantly, above all else, social cohesion shapes national resilience. The old line between domestic policy and national security is breaking down in front of us. But, Mr. Speaker, our history points the way. In 1945, Britain was exhausted. We were in debt. Our cities had been bombed. Rationing went on for years, and yet Attlee's government did not conclude that Britain could afford one priority. It built the NHS. It expanded the welfare state. It invested in housing. And it took the decision that Britain would become a nuclear power. Those decisions came from the same understanding of what this government for, what Labour is for. A country worth defending should look after its people. A country that wants to look after its people must be secure enough to do so. That is the Labour tradition. It is also, I would argue, the British tradition at its very best. But somewhere along the way, we have stopped thinking like that. We begin treating defence, growth, energy, public services and social mobility as separate conversations. They are not. They are different parts of the same challenge. Whether Britain can still provide security, opportunity and resilience for its people in a more dangerous world. That is why I ultimately concluded I could no longer remain in government. The issue was never simply a defence budget. It is whether government was moving with the urgency the moment demands. We know nearly 1 million young people outside education, employment or training. We know poor mental health costs this country hundreds of billions. We know our armed forces needs modernising. We know our adversaries are becoming more aggressive. We know our energy system remains exposed. We inherited a mess, but the population is fed up of pointing the finger. They're looking to us for courage, clarity and conviction to make the changes at scale and, importantly, the speed that the nation requires. But, Mr. Speaker, I've seen what our country can do. I've seen it in uniform. I've seen it in the communities across the nation. I've seen it on these benches where we are at our very best. The talent, the ideas, the passion, the courage, it's all here. Indeed, we have it all. I resign because I believe Britain and this Labour government can deliver. I believe we can think longer term, I believe we can act earlier, and I believe we can once again build a country that provides security in the broadest sense of the word. Security for our nation, security for our communities, security for our working families, security for the next generation. That is the debate I'm confident this resignation has started. Thank you.
We'll let the front benches change over.
Well, there we have it. Twin resignation statements from the former Defence Secretary and former Defence Minister John Healey and Al Cairns. I have to say, Al Cairns in his statement sounded almost prime ministerial. It was a wide-ranging speech that went beyond the issue of defence. John Healey sticking just to defence, excoriating line there for
Thank you, Madam
the
Deputy
Chancellor.
Speaker. In February,
but Al Khan speaking about wider issues the country faces.
Oh, yeah, immigration, energy, the economy even, I think he mentioned as well. Very interesting indeed, but I think something that's gone less spoken about is the emphasis on loyalty to our veterans. The Northern Ireland Legacy Bill. This is clearly something that Al Khan feels very, very passionate about, that we should not be, you know, as you think he called it, legal wrangling.
Yeah.
And we should be loyal to our veterans. But
he did sound actually very, very concerned about the state of our country, not just in the way that we're treating our Northern Ireland veterans and other veterans of other conflicts, but actually, if there is a war coming, we've got all of these political debates over, frankly, obsolete technology that the war in Ukraine has shown is not enough to keep us safe. I mean, we can have... It's important that we have planes and boats and all of those things. But he gave this example, this one example of a town the size of Hereford in Ukraine that had 12,000 drones in its skies. And the drones accounted for 90% of the casualties. If we do not have the manufacturing capability to build hundreds of thousands of drones, we are not going to win any war that we're a part of.
Oh, yeah, apparently Ukraine are using 200,000 drones a month in their fight back against Russia. And apparently we've got a total of 8,000 available to us at all.
It's pathetic.
It's pathetic. Yeah, GBNews chief political correspondent Catherine Forster joins us now. Catherine, we all read their resignation letters. Now they've put it into words in the House of Commons.
Yes, two very powerful speeches that I thought by John Healey, the former Defence Secretary till last Thursday, and Al Khan's as well. And John Healey saying basically that he had no regrets from resigning, that he felt that he had no choice because the government has not set a date to get to 3% of GDP on defence. And he was saying that by 2030, well over half of NATO members will be spending 3% or more. And when allies are looking for British leadership, we must not fall behind. He says we must not fall short. Our adversaries do not follow timetables set by the Treasury. He went on to say that he loved the job, that he wouldn't miss going to bed with 3 phones or the 3 a.m. phone calls. But he says that he's proud of what they have done in 2 years of a Labour government that is in deep trouble, of course, looking at what happened in the local elections and the elections in Scotland and Wales. I thought what Al Khan said was very interesting as well, because for him it was not only about the funding, though that clearly is a problem. We had the head of the armed forces telling a parliamentary committee that they would simply be able to do less if the government did not find more money, but also talking about the nature of warfare and how it was changing. One of the bits I wrote down was exactly what you were just saying, Tom, about a town in Ukraine that 12,000 drones in the air, and 90% of injuries are now from drones. Drones are something that we are beginning to get to grips with, but clearly the numbers being used and the way that war is waging has changed very dramatically with this conflict in Russia, Ukraine. And he feels that we are in danger of fighting. We should be thinking about how to fight the next war, the war tomorrow, and that we're in danger instead of preparing for war as it was fought in the past. He said too, of course, about the Troubles Legacy Bill, that was a huge reason for him also standing down, because he just feels that it is indefensible that people who fought for our country, OK, the uniforms are gone.
OK, Catherine, we're going to have to interrupt just to get Evian, because Christopher is ready and waiting for us. We'll come back to you in a bit. Christopher Hope, here you are.
Hello, both. Yes, well, I was hearing what Al Khan was saying here in the French Alps. As Tom says,
a clear, I think, a tilt of the leadership. He's going way outside his defence brief. John Healey seems to stuck to his in the terms of that resignation statement. Of course, it seems to me that the leadership battle, the people who want to try and replace Keir Starmer, they are polishing their weapons. They're getting ready. We heard earlier from Wes Streeting, he thinks he has the 81 MPs necessary to stand. Andy Burnham could be back in Parliament by the weekend. He says his stand if Wes Streeting stands. So there we are. And maybe Al Carnes could be an outsider for that, try and get the support, because there aren't enough MPs to go around. So whether they can do that, we'll wait and see. For Keir Starmer's point of view, he is now talking about how he will fight on. He says he's been underestimated before. His critics often underestimate him, but he believes he can fight on and fight to win. Here is the clip he gave earlier to reporters.
A landslide victory in 2024 for a 5-year mandate for this Labour government. I said at the time, we will both invest in our public services and we will grow our economy. And many people said to me at the time, just as they're saying things to me now, that's not possible here. And if you look at the results, we have invested in our NHS, waiting lists have come down, biggest drop in 17 years just the other week, and at the same time, our economy is stable and we've got the highest growth in the G7 at the moment. So very many times on my political journey, people have said to me, it's not possible. They said it's not possible to...
Well, we're looking at live pictures now of the leaders of the G7. We can see Donald Trump, Giorgia Meloni, Sani Takechi of Japan there as well, all just leaving there after having taken the famous family photo that they do every G7. And Emmanuel Macron there, of course, he is playing host over these days, opening the door there and tapping Donald Trump on the back as he walks in. We can also make out Narendra Modi, Ursula von der Leyen, some of those who are invited guests to the G7, not just the principal 7 nations, of course, but also external countries, invited guests, amongst them India, Ukraine and others. But clearly discussions taking place here.
Keir Starmer taking a wide berth around Donald Trump, who seems to be very engaged with Giorgia Meloni at the moment. I'm sure they agree on quite a bit, those two.
They potentially do. It's interesting, normally, well, in previous G7s, what we had seen is the Prime Minister trying to get up and close and personal to Donald Trump, to speak to Donald Trump and make sure he gets as much face time as possible. It looks like precisely the opposite is happening today. The Prime Minister giving him as wide a berth as possible, perhaps trying to get as little face time as possible with the President of the United States. I'm sure people can make up their own minds as to why.
Well, yes, we haven't actually found out if there is going to be a little bit of a bilateral meeting between Donald Trump and Sir Keir Starmer. I don't know if that is actually going to take place. Of course, they're around the same table a lot of the time, but there were words that Donald Trump might potentially start talking about immigration issues in Europe, start talking about perhaps the social media bans and the crackdown on social media, which of course belong to a lot of US tech firms, so they have interests over there, of course, to do with our policies over here. But there you go, the leaders meeting and talking.
And Donald Trump in intense conversation now with the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, as Emmanuel Macron, President of France, watches on. I find it fascinating, always fascinating, seeing how these world leaders behave together. And ordinarily in their countries, they are top dog. But here in this room, they are not top dog. They're competitors with one another, nominally equals, although we do know that, of course, they are not equals. We do know that there is one superpower in this room, and that is represented by the man in the red tie and blonde quiff. But
he does have the most presence, doesn't he?
Yes, absolutely. It does seem that this is a difficult time, though, for many of these leaders. The world economy has, of course, taken a slight shaking, perhaps due to some of those international events, Iran, which may well be wrapping up now. But also we've seen Japan. We were just looking at Takeshi, who's a relatively new Prime Minister in Japan, and Japan's just had to raise its interest rates. So clearly there are some issues for all of these countries around this table.
Well, shall we have a speak to Professor of US Foreign and Security Policy, Professor David Dunn, on all this? Professor, some images there we're just watching live of the leaders of those countries meeting. A lot on their plates, as you can imagine. Donald Trump, what's most concerning him right now?
Well, I think that Trump will be keen to re-engage in the whole question of Ukraine because, in a sense, he will be keen to change the subject shortly when the details of the Iran deal are announced, because that's not the optimum deal that he would hope for, and therefore I imagine Trump is keen to actually move on to the next thing, and perhaps where he can get more of a foreign policy success than he's got with regard to Iran. So we can expect that to be a part of the messaging. But as you say, it's also the case that Trump likes to come back to his hit list of favourite topics. And so bashing the Europeans on social media bans, on what he regards as free speech, and on immigration may also be part of his messaging.
Now, what is the actual issue that Donald Trump might move on to next? I mean, it is often, or detractors of Donald Trump have often said he's got a relatively short attention span, that he likes to move from one thing to another. Do you think he'll see Iran as being wrapped up now and perhaps move to another foreign policy issue, or will he turn domestic?
I think he's got very little scope to do things domestically. Most of his initiatives in Congress have been met with some degree of blockage. He's been blocked by the courts on a whole variety of other issues, from the Kennedy Center to his so-called slush fund. So the area that presidents tend to focus more on in their second terms, where they have more leeway and they have more executive action, is the area of foreign policy. And we know before this meeting that Trump spoke both to President Putin and to President Zelensky, and he issued a statement saying that actually he was keen for this thing now to come to a conclusion, and he hoped that Russia would actually move in that direction. So I think that having neglected Ukraine, given the focus on Iran over the last 3.5 months, I can see there being an opportunity for him to focus back on this issue. The concern for the Europeans is that in his haste for a deal, he may not necessarily get the best deal as far as the Europeans and the Ukrainians are concerned.
OK, well, Professor David Dunn, thank you very much indeed for your time, Professor of US Foreign and Security Policy. Let's go back to Evian now and speak to our political editor, Christopher Hobe. Christopher, what's the latest from all these talks ongoing?
That's right, Emily and Tom. Well, there's been the PM has been speaking to reporters, UK reporters travelling with him this morning, and the embargo on what he's been saying has just lifted. The PM made clear that in terms of his relationship with Donald Trump, he says he had a very productive, very good conversation with him last night. As things stand, as you know, there's no planned bilateral, no formal meeting between the UK and US delegations. But the PM said to reporters that he had he sat with him last night for 2 hours at dinner, that there was no concerns raised about the social media ban for children in our country. Of course, there had been speculation that Donald Trump may step in on behalf of US tech companies upset and cross about that ban announced by the Prime Minister on Monday. And the issue of defence spending, raised eloquently there by both Al Carnes and John Healey, also was not raised by the President, and he thinks there'll be no negative impact. So as far as he's concerned, of course, as you may say so, the special relationship remains intact despite these recent issues that could have made it wobble. Of course, Donald Trump is giving a press conference tomorrow, mid-afternoon, which will be box office. I'm sure we'll be taking that on GB News. That'll be an extraordinary moment, as it always is, when Donald Trump gives statements. But as things stand, according to the Prime Minister at least, his relationship with Donald Trump is as good as it ever was, despite the fact, of course, they've only met for the first time at this summit since the UK refused to take part in the Iranian bombing missions.
Difficult topics.
Yes, it is. I mean, all these areas are difficult areas. I mean, we may well be that we may hear Donald Trump tomorrow talking about immigration, talking about concerns about security and Europe. We've seen J.D. Vance, his number to the Vice President of the United States. He's been stepping in. We may see the same also. So we're not over yet, and these events, these summits can easily be derailed, and Donald Trump is the ideal person to do that so often. But for Keir Starmer, he is obviously facing what could be a very, very difficult weekend if the by-elections if Labour win these by-elections on Thursday into Friday. So I think very quickly the memory of the G7 will fall away as he tried to reassert his authority over his own party. He is saying, though, in terms that he believes he's the guy who can do this. He's faced down critics before. He believes that the July 2024 election result was a personal mandate for him. He's urging people not to forget that. He's got to find a way somehow, though, of connecting with an audience who it appears have given up on him.
And as we're just looking at pictures here of the family photograph, all those leaders standing together, Keir Starmer was standing sort of over the right-hand shoulder of Donald Trump, not making small talk with the president. I know he was sitting next to the President of the United States a little bit earlier, but it does seem a little bit conspicuous today how little chatter there's been between the two men.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, all these bilaterals are arranged in advance. There's a bilateral tomorrow. That's a meeting with the two countries. A big meeting tomorrow with Prime Minister Modi from India. That's before the President Trump's press conference tomorrow afternoon. He has said they had a good chat for 2 hours last night with no one listening, no translators, no one trying to write down what's been agreed between the parties. So there was private meetings yesterday, but in terms of formal meetings, they haven't happened. Now, it may be that Donald Trump can sense the power ebbing away from the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, with nearly 100 Labour MPs wanting him gone. I think 7 or so resignations in the past 4 weeks or 5 weeks from his government. They may think, well, what's the point in trying to speak to him? This could be his last summit here. There's a G20 expected in Mar-a-Lago, to Donald Trump's resort in Florida in November. But it is noticeable, I think, to me, that his wife, Lady Starmer, Victoria Starmer, has come on this trip. Now, she hasn't been on one, and I've been on every single one under Keir Starmer. She hasn't been on one since the NATO summit in July in Washington, D.C., July 2024. It may be, as you said, that the issue of bookending the Starmer premiership, maybe that Victoria Starmer wants to feel the kind of upside of being the Prime Minister's wife, being travelling overseas and being flown around and meeting with world leaders. There is, of course, also what they call a spousal programme. So Emmanuel Macron's wife has been taking all the spouses on various trips today, and there should be clips of that somewhere to show you later.
Interesting stuff. Well, Christopher Hope, thanks indeed for being there live at the G7 for us in Evian, just on the Swiss border with France.
Because I can't imagine the small talk is very good between Donald Trump and Keir Starmer myself. They have absolutely nothing in common, apart from leading countries.
That's true. Well, I mean,
their worldviews are just totally.
To what extent is one of them leading the country? I don't know. I'll let viewers decide that. But it's time now for the Great British Giveaway, and it's your time. Well, it's ticking on for your chance to win our big cash prize, £76,543.21, all totally tax-free. You'll get every single penny of it. That 21 pence, of course, very important. Here's Helly Sparks with all the details.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to live the summer of your dreams. As we could be making all of those dreams come true this year with a totally tax-free £76,543.21 in tax-free cash to be won. Someone really has to win it, and it could be you. What would you do with all that cash? That could be your year on us. Or find yourself in the lap of 5-star luxury, somewhere like here, the Imperial Island Resort in Paphos. You really could be the next guaranteed winner, but don't miss out, there's only 2 weeks left to enter.
For a chance to win £76,543.21 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 1, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, good luck indeed. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more still to come.
Yes, the Shadow Minister, Nick Timothy, has branded Muslims praying beside the Iraq and Afghanistan memorial an act of domination. So should public prayer be allowed anywhere?
But after the break, the National Crime Agency orders police forces to reinvestigate historic grooming gang allegations that go back as far as 2010.
All of that and more to come with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past 2. Now, 8 closed grooming gang cases have been referred back to police forces for re-investigation.
Yes, the National Crime Agency is reviewing hundreds of files where potential lines of inquiry may have been missed because of human error.
Well, with all the details, it's our national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, what's going on?
Well, some 1,200 cases were sent by 23 police forces to the NCA's Operation Beacon Port, set up last year, because they were asked to submit cases involving 2 or more people where they had closed the investigation with no further action. Now, using expert analysis and data analysis, the NCA have prioritised some of those cases, those that included allegations of rape, and they've also conducted assessment of other factors, including the suspects still being alive and them taking place since 2010. And they've narrowed down 8 cases that they have sent back to some police forces to be reopened because they want them to be investigated again. Now, none of these cases have previously been reviewed, and last year we heard from the NCA their concerns about human error being identified in some of those original investigations. Errors including not a lack of best practice in dealing with victims and survivors, a failure to adequately investigate suspects or interview them properly, and some procedural or investigative errors. So they've trained some 800 officers across England and Wales, and that's where Beacon Port is focused. And they've made this announcement today, 1 year on after Baroness Louise Casey released her report into grooming gangs that set forward in motion a range of actions. She made 12 recommendations. The one that took the most attention was, of course, the national inquiry that the Prime Minister agreed to launch actually a day before this report even came out. He said, I'm going to do this. And we've also seen this national police investigation being launched now. So it's entering a new phase, as the NCA has said. We don't know where these investigations are taking place, and for reasons for sort of operational and investigative security and process, they're not going to share that information. As you can imagine, there are lots of survivors around the country who will be thinking, might my case be investigated? Might my town be investigated as part of the national inquiry? For at least 8 cases, that process is underway.
But they're keeping quiet on the exact locations, right, just to avoid potential perpetrators escaping or making themselves scarce.
That's right, and there have been so many cases that we've reported on, even some in the last month, and cases that are coming up that we know about as well, where suspects or those who have been convicted have fled or absconded during their trial. We're aware of one man who was meant to be sentenced last Thursday in Sheffield Crown Court but wasn't present. He's an Iranian small boat migrant who fled during that trial that I saw him at. He was on bail last month. Sharwan Muhammadi, he's on the run right now, last seen in Birmingham in mid-May.
So you saw him at the trial, and in the between times, between then and now, he's just fled somewhere. Abroad, do we know?
Yeah, he was granted, he was last seen in Birmingham, May 18th. But officers fled, from South Yorkshire, rushed down there to engage with it, and they were blocked from sharing information about him missing until the trial was concluded, because, of course, that could be seen to be prejudicial. So we were in a very frustrating position of knowing that an offender had fled, but he was still on trial at the time. A suspect, he was still on trial at the time, but the evidence was very convincing. And then when he was convicted of a couple of offences, only then were the police able to issue that appeal, some 3 weeks on. I imagine the NCA will be thinking in a similar mindset about this case. The NCA are also looking forward to a sentencing of 2 grooming gang offenders on Monday at Sheffield Crown Court from Operation Stovewood, which is where they look into Rotherham and Sheffield, for example, South Yorkshire. Now, one of the people who should be sentenced that day as well, he's believed to be in Pakistan right now, having also not appeared for the start of his trial last August. I remember attending these trials and hearing about these cases and not being able to report that at the time. But yeah, Ammar Ilyas, he is meant to be sentenced, but he's not. He's in absentia. He was tried.
How frustrating for the victims.
The suspicion will be that many of these individuals have strong connections and links to other countries.
Yep.
Some of these individuals claimed asylum in this country and may well be fleeing back to their home country, which really does put the spotlight on whether they should have been granted asylum in the first place.
Yes, it's a remarkable situation, a terrifying one, really. I mean, we've all heard of cases of asylum seekers returning to their home country on holiday. It's quite another to flee back because you claim to be escaping that country for persecution, but are now returning because you fear the law in the country that you have fled to, that country being the United Kingdom. But that is the sort of scenario that the National Crime Agency and other police forces have found themselves in while conducting these investigations. So we can understand why they're not wanting to disclose information at this stage. And you can imagine also, well over 1,200 cases being sent to them, 200 prioritised. 8 isn't a big number. There are many other survivors around the country who will be thinking, will my case be reopened? Is there enough information there to go on? And also, even for victims who have already got prosecutions, they might say, look, 3, 4, 5 or 6 offenders have been prosecuted in my case, but I know of hundreds more or dozens more that weren't prosecuted. So many cases there still to be assessed.
So many people waiting for justice still. Charlie Peters, thank you very much indeed. Let's go back to Evian with Christopher Hope. Christopher, any updates?
From here in the G7 meeting in Evian. Now, the PM, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has met with the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa. The pair have agreed with Ursula von der Leyen, the EU President, to hold a summit on the 22nd of July. The PM says this: "My Labour government is delivering on our promise to reset our relationship and put Britain at the heart of Europe. Together, we will tackle the cost of living, boost jobs, and so it goes on." Now, we knew that summit was going to happen. We knew it was forecast. It's later than I thought it would take place. I was expecting it this month, and there has been talk about wrangling on areas of they can't agree on. But this is all about reducing the barriers of UK companies trading with the European Union. There also could be news about an 18 to 30-year-old freedom of movement idea for younger people to travel to and fro between the European Union and the UK. That'll be capped at a certain level, and we await to see what that is. But this is this summit. It'll be held in the European Union. The last one, which I attended, was in Lancaster House in the UK. This will be held elsewhere, somewhere in the European Union, I expect, in Brussels or somewhere near Brussels. And it's all part of this reset, which we're told Labour wants to do, and to bring the UK and European Union closer together.
2nd of July is quite far away at this point. Could Keir Starmer no longer be our Prime Minister by then?
Well, that is possible, but I think unlikely. I mean, I say possible because it is always possible that the Prime Minister throws the towel in and stops being Prime Minister, and a caretaker takes over, for example, as a Labour leader, and therefore de facto, or even that might make David Lammy Prime Minister as Deputy PM. Anyway, we'll wait and see. That is unlikely because the PM, every single fibre of his being, is screaming out, "I want to stay in this job for as long as I can." He wants to take on Wes Streeting, he wants to take on Andy Burnham if he gets back into Parliament, or Al Carnes, or whoever, and stay on as leader. So I think this shows intent on behalf of the Prime Minister, and that's why the G7 exists, to allow these meetings to take place between the principals in the European Union, our Prime Minister, and to agree with this meeting. So July 22nd, mark it in your diaries, 1 month after the 10th anniversary of Brexit. The Labour government will look to get us all closer to the European Union. What we're looking out for, of course, is, are the red lines crossed? Is sovereignty being traded away for trade? And does that mean that Brexit is substantially weakened?
And a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, is this another clinging on ploy where the Prime Minister can say, I've got to be Prime Minister at least for another month because I've got to get to this summit, my summit that I've been planning?
I know. Well, Tom, there's no question that's what he would like us to say on GB News. I mean, the Prime Minister does believe that he has these connections. He does make all this effort to talk to Ursula von der Leyen and others. I mean, she calls him Dear Keir when they meet. They have this apparently quite a good relationship from the bits we see of it. And the PM is very keen to carry that on and show that he is battling on behalf of the UK globally. But he has still got these problems nationally at home, as witnessed by that devastating statement from John Healey earlier.
I'm going to miss having a Prime Minister with such an eminently rhymable name.
Dear Keir.
Dear Keir, Starmer, Farmer, Harmer, Two-Tier Keir. I mean, the nicknames just roll off the tongue. Never hear Keir. I mean, all of the no other potential suitor for the role of Prime Minister has such a rhymable name, and that, I think, we will all miss.
No, nothing rhymes with Wes Streeting, does it?
Treating?
Treating. Anyway, Christopher, we'll have to leave it there. Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed. We'll catch up with you later on. But yes, another story that's caught our eye today. The Shadow Minister, Nick Timothy, has branded Muslims praying beside the Iraq and Afghanistan memorial an act of domination. Here it is. Here's a video clip of some of these gentlemen praying outside in the public space outside the Ministry of Defence by a memorial. Should public prayer like this be allowed anywhere?
Well, all of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Now, depending where you are in the UK today, there's going to be quite a different feel to things. In the southeast, it's going to be very warm, if not hot. Further north and west, a cloudier, cooler feel because we have low pressure to the northwest of the UK, and that's driving some fronts across us. And these fronts are bringing a lot of cloud and also some outbreaks of rain. The rain doesn't look particularly heavy, and it's quite intermittent across northern parts through the bulk of the day, but more persistent rain pushing into parts of Wales and southwest England later on. More central eastern parts of England having a generally fine day. Lots of bright sunny weather breaking through the cloud, and temperatures here peaking in the mid to high 20s, so feeling very warm or hot, markedly fresher towards the north and west. Into this evening, and we're sticking with the quite cloudy theme across much of Scotland. Still some outbreaks of rain around, nothing particularly heavy. There could be some blustery winds in a few spots, but they're not especially strong. It's a similar story across Northern Ireland, so quite cloudy, a few spots of rain here and there. And then heading further south across, well, northern England, it's turning a bit wetter towards southwestern parts here. That's because of some rain spilling its way in from the southwest across western parts of England and also Wales. That then continues its progress further eastwards overnight. So most places, apart from the far southeast, will see some rain, and it could be persistent for a little while, but it will break up and there'll be some drier, perhaps even clear weather around before some more heavier bursts of rain come in from the southwest towards dawn. Temperatures not dropping a huge amount, most places staying in the mid to high teens Celsius, so a pretty warm night for many of us. And then tomorrow, a cloudier day in the southeast, and there will be some rain pushing through. The rain will be a little bit heavy at times across some southern parts of England as it makes its way eastwards across. Further north, and it's a showery day, so some breaks in the rain, and there might even be a bit of sunshine breaking through the cloud as well. Temperatures in the southeast down on today, elsewhere looking similar.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Currently on the M25, clockwise traffic between junctions 5 and 6 in Kent is disrupted due to a broken down vehicle, causing significant delays for commuters. Meanwhile, on the M60 clockwise at junction 15 and just before junction 14 in Salford, the road remains closed due to a serious traffic collision. Expect delays of approximately 15 minutes, but all lanes will reopen by 5:15 p.m. And on the trains, Cross Country and East Midlands Railway report disruptions at Ely, affecting multiple schedules. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 2:41. Now, the Conservative frontbencher Nick Timothy has found himself at the centre of another political storm after he branded Muslims praying beside the Iraq and Afghanistan memorial an act of domination.
Well, the remarks have triggered fierce criticism from opponents, while supporters argue that the debate is really about free speech, integration and the use of public spaces.
Well, joining us now is founder of Faith Matters and Tell Mama, Fayaz Mughal. Thank you very much for joining us, Fayaz. It's interesting what he said here. He says, as I've said before, choosing to pray in this way in public is a political act. It is a social statement, and yes, it is an act of domination. What are your thoughts?
Well, personally speaking, I don't think it's an act of domination. I've got a lot of time for Nick Timothy. I think he's doing it to work with Muslimism. I think it's, frankly, I think it is, let me call it this, it's not the praying, but certainly hosting a prayer like this is an act of stupidity. And let me explain that. The simple fact is there's lots and lots of places we Muslims can pray. Islam also gives the space for prayer to be done quietly. And also, if you don't have the ability to physically do it, you can do it internally. You can just pray internally. So I don't think acts like this help in terms of understanding Muslims or getting a better sense of us as communities coming together. I think individuals could have prayed somewhere else.
Faiz, you say an act of stupidity rather than domination. Nick Timothy argues that anyone who understands Islamism understands that the domination of public spaces is part of the modus operandi. It's to show who's in charge and to show other Muslims and the wider public that the authorities will bend to their will. Is there any truth to that?
There is absolute truth to the issue around Islamism using places of worship to dominate spaces. Those are within the context, for example, of countries like Egypt, also places in Europe. We've seen it in places in Europe. And so, yes, Islamism has used places of worship as a form of marking a political and an Islamist stance. In this context of a handful of individuals, and we also have males and females, a handful of individuals, it is not within this context. It is, however, something that they could have done privately. Even if they didn't have the space to do it, they could have made the prayers inside or kind of internally within themselves.
What about the mass prayers? Because Nick Timothy caused a lot of heat, got a lot of heat when he spoke about Trafalgar Square. I think it was Eid, where a huge number of Muslims took part in a mass prayer. We've also seen it in a lot of parks in London and Birmingham and I'm sure elsewhere. Hundreds, even potentially thousands of Muslims all on their knees and hands praying. Could that be seen as an act of domination?
Again, I really did reflect quite significantly on that. And again, I didn't think that that was an act of domination. I thought it was, again, an act that was not helpful at all. I thought it was much more spontaneous. And again, spontaneity is something around the context we need to look at. I think they shouldn't have personally done it. There are loads of private places people can pray. And actually, it doesn't help our social cohesion agenda when they do this. So I would urge people in the future to think carefully. There are loads of private spaces. People of other faiths pray quietly. And frankly, we don't, as Muslims, I mean, I speak as a British Muslim member myself, I don't have to make a song and dance about it.
Yeah, no, I think we're just losing you there, but thank you very much. Fayez Mughal, the founder of Faith Matters and Tell Mama. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I think there's something slightly different about, an event that has been pre-organised and, it's a celebration of Ramadan, I think is a different category than turning up somewhere and...
No one wants to have a food market and having some fun, but the mass prayer, it's alien to British culture. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
The horses are ready, the hats are on and Royal Ascot is underway. We'll be there live.
Yes, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
A heatwave is building across western parts of Europe at the moment, and that heat is going to be pushing further eastwards through the next few days. Whilst there is a lot of sunshine mixed in with it, and temperatures therefore getting into the mid to high 30s, possibly even low 40s, with that heat, worth bearing in mind, we could see some hefty thundery downpours developing across, many areas. Some heavy or more persistent rain affecting Greece as well through tomorrow. Otherwise, it's looking largely dry, often sunny and hot through the end of the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
All the things that we might not think about when we think about a pint of beer, all the things that go into running a pub like this one. So I'll hand you the microphone, you tell us while I have a go at this. Don't judge me too harshly, Dawn.
Amazing. So obviously people don't take into effect that the energy costs and the raw material costs, also the packaging, overheads and the tax hikes. So when we're pulling a pint of beer, we have to think about the cost that's gone into making the beer and the rises in that. We also have to think about the overheads, the staff, the electrics which are plumbed in to pour in a pint. This obviously is very astronomical to pubs because if it increases, we're therefore going to have to put that onto the consumer, making the pint of beer more expensive.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
You can't help wondering if that's what Prince William, future king, of course, is sort of planning for the future, whether that's the sort of slightly more laid-back attitude towards modern life.
Yes, I mean, I think we're going to see a huge change in the type of monarchy we have when he comes to the throne. We can very much see that King Charles is his mother's son. King Charles very much regards the Coronation Act as a sacrament, that it's essentially akin to becoming a priest, something that you do for life, much as the Queen Elizabeth felt it was too, a deeply sacred spiritual bond, a covenant between God and himself and the people. We know that that is not really the way that Prince William regards monarchy as well. I personally think, for example, that Prince William will become the first king to abdicate.
GB News, the People's Channel. Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
I thought the film, which Spielberg did, didn't somehow strike the right note.
So this would be the way I felt about High Society, the musical. It's glossy, it's beautiful, it's impressive, but you feel a little bit distant from it. War Horse, you are in there. Fantastic humour, that brings you in, you laugh with them, you care about them. So even when they're in the trenches and Albert makes a friend, they're bantering about girlfriends and things like that. You absorb how arbitrary and terrible war is, you know, decisions made by people far away, young lads just shoved over to run horse charges
and it's happening now, Stefan, let's be honest.
Absolutely.
What you're describing is happening now.
Well, this is why it's resonating so much, because you're sitting there going, what is the point? It's so beautifully done. I cannot recommend it enough.
Where?
This one is on at the National Theatre. It's Come Back Home. It's where it started almost 20 years ago.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 10 to 3. And now the man suspected of captaining the intercepted Russian Shadow Fleet tanker has appeared in court.
Well, GB News national reporter Will Godley has been at Southampton Crown Court for us, and he has the latest.
Well, good afternoon to you from Southampton Magistrates Court. It was a very short hearing this afternoon, a first appearance for AJ Pant, of course, the man suspected of captaining this Russian Shadow Fleet tanker that was seized in the early hours of Sunday by the Royal Marines and the National Crime Agency. The 38-year-old and Indian national is charged with supplying a prohibited oil product to a third country under the Russia sanctions regulations from 2019. Now, AJ Pant appeared in court today via a video link from Bournemouth police station, where he was sitting next to his solicitor wearing a grey T-shirt. He spoke in English to confirm his name, his date of birth, and also to give an address in India. Now, he was asked to enter his pleas. He gave no indication of what his plea might be, but we also heard more details in Southampton Magistrates Court this afternoon about what the tanker was holding, described in court as a substantial amount of oil that was found. The precise amount, 98,000 tonnes, according to the prosecution, who said that that would have a very significant value. We also heard more details about the operation from the National Crime Agency and the Royal Marines. They said the prosecution told the court that this vessel was being tracked since it left Russian waters earlier this month. We were told that the vessel entered UK waters without a legitimate flag on the 13th of June off the coast of Margate. The offence that Pant has been accused of breaching Russian sanctions would carry a maximum sentence of 10 years imprisonment. But before all of that, it's going to go to trial. Now, it's going to go to Bournemouth at Crown Court. Pant's next appearance in court will be the 16th of July. Until then, he's been remanded into custody.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Will Godley, for bringing us up to speed on that case. But to end the show, we're going to head off to Royal Ascot, to the races, darling.
Oh, it's nice to end on a little bit of good news, isn't it? Well, let's speak to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who joins us live from sunny Ascot.
Yeah, it certainly is good to end on some good news, Tom and Emily. Yes, the champagne is flowing, so is the Pimm's, the great old British tradition, one of the most prestigious events in the social calendar. And the King and Queen have arrived. They led the royal procession in the carriages alongside the Princess Royal, Peter Phillips and his new wife, of course, Harriet Sperling, now of course Mrs. Peter Phillips. The Duke and Duchess of Gloucester also there. You may well actually be able to see them down on the parade ring. I believe they're giving out a prize a little bit later on. Now the Duchess, she is wearing the hat made by one of the Ascot bursary recipients as part of the King's Foundation Millinery Fellowship with Chanel. That's of course the King's charity. He's all about preserving British tradition, preserving British heritage, skills and crafts, and that young man who's won that scholarship is now, his headpiece is now being worn by royalty. So a bit of royal boost to British businesses right there, particularly when he sets up his own business. But we've got a number of races going on today, including the Ascot Stakes, the Reaching High horse, Reaching High. That is the King and Queen's horse, owned by the King and Queen. The trainer Willie Mullins, who of course is described as the master of his trade by John Warren, the King and Queen's racing director, racing manager, I should say, of course, who had a huge affection for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who was at Ascot racing for the majority of her life. Last time she was here was 2021. King and Queen, of course, here all day.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Cameron Walker, have a lovely afternoon and evening.
Don't have too much Pimm's.
Not too much Pimm's, or champagne for that matter.
Absolutely. A little bit's allowed, I think.
A bit jealous. He looks like he's having a nice time there.
Absolutely.
Always well dressed.
Thank you very much indeed for staying with us for Good Afternoon Britain. Up next, of course, is the one and only Martin.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's time for your Met Office weather forecast for GB News. And now, through the next few days, we are going to see things turning hotter across parts of the southeast. Elsewhere, sticking with the slightly fresher feel with cloud and rain at times, all because of low pressure that's lurking to the northwest of us. And it's this that's driving various fronts across, and that's what we have at the moment. A fair amount of cloud for many through the end of today, and outbreaks of rain spilling their way in. The rain turning a bit heavier, a bit more persistent for most overnight, just some parts of the far southeast staying largely dry. There will be some breaks in the cloud in between those outbreaks of rain, but not many. And with all that cloud, it's going to be quite a warm, perhaps even muggy night for many of us. Temperatures holding up in the mid to high teens Celsius. Some coastal fog, though, developing around parts of the south and southwest. Into tomorrow morning then, and well, for most it's a cloudier and quite a wet start to the day. Some further outbreaks of rain, which could be a little bit on the heavy side and quite persistent across parts of Scotland through the morning. Starting to break up a little bit across Northern Ireland, but here a few showers pushing in, and then across the bulk of England and Wales, outbreaks of rain, and they could be heavy at times, all making their way eastwards as a result. Some parts of the east-southeast might not see a huge amount of rain until slightly later in the morning, but even here we are going to see the rain arriving, just perhaps Kent and Sussex staying largely dry, with some sunshine breaking through here. Once the more persistent outbreaks of rain clear away towards the east, things will be turning dry by the afternoon, but there will still be a couple of showers for many of us too. Temperatures in the southeast down compared to today, but still feeling quite muggy, and elsewhere they're looking similar, so high teens or low 20s for most. A few more showery bursts of rain to come through the end of the day tomorrow, but it is going to turn a little bit drier with some clearer skies overnight into Thursday before more rain affects northern and western parts through the end of the week. And in the southeast, we could see a bit of a heat wave developing.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to live the summer of your dreams. With a totally tax-free £76,543.21 in tax-free cash to be won. Someone really has to win it, and it could be you.
For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690. 990 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Friday.